Now, okay, so I'm going to record this session. This is going to be a conversation between me and my friend Erin, who did a show last night where she was going over some of the stuff that happened with Charlie Kirk and some of the questions that she has and theories that she's came up with and things that she's seen that's drawn her interest. I'm going to come in, probably interject, ask questions. Then at the end, if she's not talked about, we've not covered some of the thoughts that I have, I'm going to do that as well. But because me and Erin have really good back and forth, we don't always agree. She's got strong opinions as well as me. I do as well, but we have this really good rapport where we respect each other enough to where it's okay if we disagree. I wish people in this country acted that way a little bit more often because I think people get ground into what they believe and they're just not open to listening to another person's opinion. So that's why I've asked Erin to step in here and we're going to record this actual session. We've done this a lot over the years. I've just never actually recorded one. So we're going to do this because we have really good conversations, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. It's just
Yeah.
we come from kind of different angles on things like most people do because we have a lot of shared experiences in life, but we also have very divergent experiences in life. And I kind of lean more political and libertarian, and you lean less political and less libertarian. So,
I'm more conservative, like
yeah,
Christian conservative, and you're more, yeah. So,
I'm more
but we,
focused on politics.
well, I've probably spent the last 8 years in politics. I just don't get ground into it because I think it's helped me a lot because my sister is very left and I'm right. So that's always made me push against people that say that the left is a lost cause. They're just too dumb to educate themselves. Because some of the smartest people in my life would have voted for Kamala, right? So I don't believe in this whole narrative. Well, don't invite them to dinner, don't invite them to Thanksgiving, brush them out of your life. I'm an advocate for, I've told my sister if I thought it meant losing my relationship with her, I would put a Kamala sign in my front yard when she comes over. Just because to try to, rescue and save my relationship with her. Because the presidents are going to change. My sister is not going to change. So I think
Oh,
those are
I
the
agree
things that
with
people
that. I
forget.
mean, I'm when I say politics, I mean that um I'm not speaking of Trump. I'm definitely not speaking of the Republican Party. I'm on nobody's team per se. I'm on team My Legacy, my four Revolutionary War soldiers, my War of 1812 soldier, my 10 or 15 Civil War soldiers, Spanish War soldiers, Vietnam, World War I, World War II, all of it.
Yeah.
And if I don't fight, then, what was it all for?
Well,
And
that's probably, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
I don't see this as anything to do with political parties. I could give a flying crap about either of them. They're both scammy as heck, but it is the system we have, so I just have to tolerate it. And I guess for me, people that care about the future and kids, whether they have them or not, are on my team, and people who don't give a crap and don't care about this country and think they're above it all are not on my team. So there are a lot of liberals, a lot of my friends, a lot of my gay friends, people when I worked in the fashion industry and that, who is just as much on my team as anybody else because they believe in the future, they believe they're Americans, and they believe that America's good. I have conservative friends or Christian friends who I
Mhm.
really don't think are on my team because
Well,
they just don't share that view. So when I say politics, I mean saving the country. So
well, I see this is where I push back because you frame that as well as like I'm not about saving the country.
no, I'm just saying that my mindset is very focused on the mechanics of politics and power, whereas sometimes your mindset is more focused
Cultural
on like cultural stuff and people.
influence.
And
Yeah.
I'm not well trained in the culture wars. It wasn't the war I fought. I leave culture war to culture warriors. My autism, I barely can have I can barely say the right thing anyway. So
No, you
I'm
did
the
a great
last
job.
person you want out in the culture wars, so I leave that to people who know what they're doing.
Well, to me, it's like the whole reason I got started in this at all, like say politics at all, is briefly, and I don't want to say bogged down because I want us to get to the kind of subject matter here, but like I was somebody that couldn't stand Trump in 2015. I thought he was brash, he was rude. I couldn't stand the stuff he was posting. I was a person thought he was going to drag us into World War III. I was one of those. I would argue with my friend Cindy and my friend Christy because they were already Trump supporters, and I would debate with them about how he wasn't going to be good for the country. And I've said this story many times, but I stumbled on a 28-minute long video. I'll never forget the name of it. Cannot find it now. His name on the YouTube channel was Casey's Dad, and they had put a compilation of 28 minutes of all the things that the media had said about Trump versus what really had happened, like the whole fish food thing and the whole making fun of the journalist thing. And I was like, wait a minute, it's something right then. And I will say this, and I believe this. I believe it can happen that quickly for people. Some kind of switch gets triggered into your brain where you actually question the things that you thought, the narratives that you've been fed, and something about that moment you say, oh my God, I've been lied to. What else have I been lied to about? And for me, that starts, and I've seen this happen many times. I know you have too, Erin. They will start people on a journey of just seeking the truth and being willing to reinvestigate things that they were set on and thought they believed in that could have been built on a narrative of nothing but lies and a media propaganda or a government propaganda. That's why I stay focused on what's happening with the influencers, is because I don't believe they're probably given enough attention because they are influencing a lot of people, and they can influence people to vote, not vote the candidate they want to vote for, and they not even know it themselves. So yeah, but that, and I got started in all this with because of kids. Like I've been a staunch advocate against if I post this on YouTube, I'd be careful. Pornography, we'll just say like, but like I'm an advocate against it. I have a very just developed this probably in the last year, probably what people would consider a radical view on it. I believe it should be outlawed overall. I believe because of the detriment it does on the because now we have things like smartphones and their access to them. I believe it causes more of a leaves more of an impact on a young mind than the grown freaking men that want to advocate for the accessibility of it because they want to watch it. But I believe that there's too much access to children. It's damaging society because now it's turning people's minds to not having healthy relationships. And I won't get all into that, but if you've ever looked up one of those sites, it's all about incest and being with your family and multiple partners and BDSM. And I mean, it is not the pornography of 1972. I promise you that. You can
Oh
find
yeah.
MK Ultra pornography on the websites. It is crazy the stuff I have seen. Would shock most people because they don't want to watch it. They don't want to think about it. But I just before we jumped on here, I was watching a case of a 25-year-old woman that had just been rounded up going over to a 13-year-old boy's house that she you know, ugh, she'd abused, but lack of a better word, and they did it broad daylight out in a mall parking lot, 11 o'clock during the day, outside of a car, and so that's what
Yeah,
I worry about.
it's yeah. So anyway, Charlie,
Yeah,
um,
that's a gateway into Charlie. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Charlie. So, if you will,
right.
Erin, I'm gonna give you the floor because, like I said before we got in here, to full transparency, I called her last night and asked her to do this. I really was trying to not have a conversation with her. Some of our best conversations start and we just flow through them, but we wound up talking for about an hour and a half, and then we just shut it down because I was like, I want to get this, like this conversation free flow because we have really good ones. So I think that's best. You just do what you kind of did, talk about it. If I have any questions, I want to interject if that's okay with you. Kind of what you're seeing in all this.
Okay. So because I knew Charlie in the very beginning, he was approached by our Tea Party, I believe, although he may have spoken at another one before us. All I'm aware of is he spoke at our Tea Party, which was, I don't know, 20 minutes from his house, maybe. And he and actually Jewish kid, Orthodox Jewish kid with the
Mm-hmm.
cap on and everything, They were very into Austrian economics. And for people who don't know what Austrian economics are, it's um very much believes in uh the nature of supply and demand, like free markets, no regulation, prices will regulate themselves, the creation of capital, making money, as opposed to more Keynesian, where the government, is this top-down control mechanism. I mean, this was his life at the time. And his concern was at the time about his generation because the legacy costs of pension funds and social programs is going to crush millennials. And there's really no way you can do math to mitigate the fact that that's reality. It's a population reality. And that's why he got into this, to the best of my knowledge. And my mother and I kind of took him under our wing, and we went ahead and we told him we thought his presentation was important, that it was good, and we hooked him up with still one of my best friends, the leader of the Illinois Tea Party. And he spent about 2 weeks brainstorming with her about how he could get his message out. We worked really hard. We got him a Charlie Kirk banner. We got him hooked up with what ended up being his longtime manager, who coincidentally died about, I'm going to say, like maybe 3 to 5 years ago. He was a retired gentleman at the time that he started with Charlie. But he's the guy who got Charlie's first like big hit or gig was that this man who I talked to, who I knew. In fact, they were trying to get me to get involved with all this, but I had a baby at home and that just wasn't going to happen. So he got Charlie onto Fox Business mostly, and mostly the Cavuto show. I don't know what the connection was there, but Charlie started appearing on Fox Business as the like the voice of the young people. Like, what do young people think about this? Because at the time, during the Tea Party era, a lot of people were talking about this pension and benefits crash that's going to crush millennials. And it was a big topic of discussion. And people, if you recall, were trying to figure out how to restructure it. And we were going through the whole Obamacare uh, argument with Obama. And that was also, as we see, now healthcare's ruined. So, anyone there, including Charlie Kirk, could have told you that. All you had to do was do the math. Anyway, so that's how I met Charlie. That was Charlie's initial messaging. It
Yeah.
really is not different than what it is now, but it was really the focus of what he was doing.
Well, I'll interject real quick here and I'll just show everybody what you're talking about. This is his first appearance on Fox Business.
First time he was ever on TV, and it was right here on Fox and Friends, May 21st, 2012.
When we graduate from high school this coming June, we're handed a diploma. That's also an invoice for hundreds of thousands of dollars that my generation is going to have to pay off through interest, high taxes, and a stagnant economy. We here at SOS Liberty believe that if we do not change the conversation back to us, the kids that are going to have to inherit this debt, that our economy will be stagnant for years to come. And our website, we have really interesting things. We have videos, pictures trying to inspire the youth, SOSLiberty.com, that has a wide variety of youth from all across the country jumping onto our cause. I'm having trouble finding a summer job, as is Mike, in a lot of different regards. A lot of kids are feeling the effects of what we like to call, with the Washington economy, with a lot of debt, plummeting small business, with higher regulation and high taxes. We're just trying to reinstitute the founding principles, free market, fiscal responsibility. SOS Liberty is a nonpartisan. We don't consider this a Republican versus Democrat issue, but rather a generational one.
Ooh, how times have changed.
Wow, that's the Charlie I knew, the
There
Tea
you
Party
go.
Charlie. And so he lived in Illinois. I lived in Illinois outside of Chicago. And at some point, for reasons that I actually don't understand, although I've been told it's because he felt like Arizona was a swing state that could be fixed.
Hmm.
and brought into the solid red column. He moved to Arizona. Now his manager had moved to Indiana, and that's why they had like a P.O. box out in Minnesota. They had a garage where letters and were handled and donations that was like in a guy's garage in Lamont, Illinois. But they were kind of spread out across Illinois into Indiana because you could set up your 401 your non-for-profits in Indiana and get a much better deal. And Indiana's just a much better state to do anything from than Illinois. Plus, you get targeted in Illinois.
And he
So,
moved to Arizona in 2018, from what I could tell. But go ahead. I'm just
right,
wondering.
his entities are still, I believe, handled by some, lawyer or whatever, and still incorporated in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that was set up by the original two or three entities were set up by his original manager that he met through the Tea Party. So once he moved to Arizona, pretty much his Illinois people, I mean, apparently, I believe Tyler Boyer's from Illinois, but other than that, I just really don't know. He lost touch with the Tea Party and everything. And, obviously, if we saw him somewhere, we'd talk to him or whatever, but he moved. So, anyway, his message really hadn't changed at all, although his tactics changed. And, I'm sorry, but as far as I could tell, um, turning point was doing the college talk thing, and as part of that, he kind of got into the culture wars. I really believe that when you're okay, so now we'll go to phase 2, donors. You can't do anything without donors, and everything you see happening right now, like today, I was on Twitter. It's literally painful. I literally shake with every post. There's so much fighting going on because Charlie's original donors were free market type people, Tea Party type people. I mean, it's no secret who his donors were. Um, and they were mostly what I would call um more sort of like your Koch brother types. The free markets, pro business, like less regulation, the traditional Tea Party type donor. And there was a donor base for a Tea Party message. But once you get into the social issues, it happens. Really, there's only one class of donor when you get into the social issues, and that's the
So,
pro-life coalitions.
so you're talking about like Bill Montgomery was the co-founder of Mentor, Rebecca
Yeah,
and Bill
that's his name. I
Dunn,
couldn't. Bill
Foster,
Montgomery. I have his
Foster
card still in
Freeze,
my desk drawer here.
and then like Foster Freeze, Rebecca and Bill Dunn. Okay,
Yes,
go ahead. I
Foster
just wanted
Freeze.
to. Mhm.
Cunningham was his manager. Foster Freeze recently died. He's a good donor. He's not crazy. I believe that Uline, he's the guy, he owns like the big catalog where he ordered parts out of, like the catalog. That guy, I believe, was one of Charlie's original backers. Um I'm pretty good, huh? How do I even remember this stuff? Um, but they were all I would put in category of free speech, happy with free speech type donors, and happy with sort of the traditional pro business type GOP. And I don't know if any of those people were openly never Trumpers, but I will tell you they weren't populist. I'll tell you right now that I actually am not aware of any big donor who philosophically is a populist, because the point of populist is restricting the powerful, right? So
Mhm.
there aren't really very many big donors who say, I'm going to pay $1 million for you to pull me down. And that's the problem with MAGA. There are no donors. So you have to make deals with these people. So if you want to say MAGA is about tearing down the cabal, control that elite families and high income people and people with big government contracts, et cetera, have over the people, where we're going to own nothing and be happy and give all our jobs over to robots and AI. You're not going to find that many big donors.
Well, MAGA was always
because
about.
that's who the big donors are.
Hey, let me just try to get. MAGA was all about draining the swamp. And the swamp was what we considered those kind of people that you always felt
Exactly.
people were beholden to because of their money. And MAGA was all about trying to push to bring back in smaller businesses for the American people and look after Americans instead of everybody feel like that they're in some kind of a almost uh, they're being influenced by money more than their
In the
own
Matrix.
ideals. So they could be bought. These people look like they were being bought instead of like pushing their own agendas. Just like what happens
Yes.
in Congress with certain, lobbyists.
So for a Tea Party person, I can only speak for myself, but I'm looking right now on my bookcase. I have all the Austrian economic books right in front of me, right next to the fourth turning. But I'm assuming that Charlie, like myself, probably was not really pro-Trump in the beginning. I'm assuming probably as an influencer that Charlie got invited to some sort of Trump event. I believe his first contact was um Don Jr., who he knew through Twitter.
Oh yeah.
If I remember right, but it's kind of doesn't matter. But the point is, they would have had to sell Charlie on the idea of there being a matrix and a control grid, although because Charlie was dealing with big donors, I'm sure he was aware of the fact that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but big donors who pay for, and there's only, we all know who they are. There's only so many. And and when they pick the phone up and they call as a donor and they say, "Hey, do you know anything about X, Y, and Z?" Every single person in your organization drops everything and will scramble all day long to get the answer to X, Y, and Z. That's the
Well,
way it works at a non-for-profit,
yeah,
okay?
I had a little context here. Charlie says first met Donald Jr. probably in late 2015, about November, December, during the early stages of Trump's presidential campaign. Charlie, at 22, was building TPUSA, was invited to a private Trump campaign strategy session in New York City for young conservative influencers at Trump Tower in Manhattan. He was likely introduced by Bill Montgomery, a TPUSA co founder, or Gentry Beach, a Texas investor, an early backer of Trump. And it said Don Jr. was so impressed by Charlie's campus activism and social media reach. And this led to Charlie speaking at Trump rallies starting as early as 2016, TPUSA becoming a key youth outreach arm for the campaign, and a lasting personal friendship between Don Jr. and Charlie. So that's just wanted to add that in there.
No, I didn't know that, but that sounds about right based, on just sort of general knowledge.
Yeah.
And for Charlie, this is just my opinion. For Charlie, this is my opinion. So Charlie in person I don't know how to describe it. He's got a boyish grin and sparkly eyes. And that really doesn't come across like, unless you're talking to him. Like a lot of people say, well, how could that beauty queen fall in love with him or whatever and marry him? Because he's really kind of not a good looking guy in a way, and he's got a facial tick. But I will tell you just from my experience, when you're actually talking to him, he's so attentive to you that sometimes a person who, even with a facial tick and isn't the best looking guy or whatever, you feel very warm and engrossed with Charlie because he just had that like charisma X factor in person if he was talking to you alone, which is something even his wife Erica says he was very aware of his power over people or to engage people. Just a innate Scottish thing, I guess. And
Well,
so
he
he
actually
could,
looked like he listened to you. Charlie,
yes.
you felt like Charlie was actually listening to what you were saying, not waiting for his chance to speak so he could say something else. And just to add a dot to the, crossing the T, you can see some of the even the videos that Candace released after the fact of them dancing around in the background, dancing in cars, doing these free where they took stage little dances like. And then she posted like one of them going fishing where he didn't want to touch the fish, and it was funny. Just like all those kind of memories of him being able to let his guard down. Because if you think about what Charlie did, it's only obvious that he was in that mode when he went on stage because either he was delivering a very impactful speech, or at the end of it he was taking Q&As, and he always asked the people that disagreed to go to the front. So he's always kind of in that Q&A debate kind of mode. But to your point, behind the scenes, if you've seen anything of him, he was very funny and charismatic, and and at the very like you said, very boyish charm for sure.
Right. And men would open their billfold and write a big check.
There you
I
go.
mean, I'm just telling you that
Yeah, I agree. I
they
don't doubt it.
believed in him because he was a good salesman. He drew you in, you believed in him, and he delivered.
Yeah, he
And
was
that's just
genuine.
rare. Most
Very
people,
rare.
whether they mean to be a bullshit artist or not, they just can't deliver or don't. And
Hmm.
so he was starting to really bring some money in. And, you know, I really think for him at some point, again, this is my opinion, Charlie was a kind hearted person. And I noticed around 2016 or 2017, this weird online culture of hating boomers. And just knowing Charlie the way I know Charlie, all these years he talked about, and you just played the clip, that the millennials are screwed because the boomers spent all the money. And I'm just boiling that down to the internet culture, millennial versus boomer, kind of mean spirited thing that was going on. And even to this day, if you have boomers out in your chat and you start talking that way, they get very upset. But, and I get it. And I personally believe so. Charlie loved reading books, like, and he loved observing people and being mentored. Like, he got very into Hillsdale College and did like the whole American history thing. Then, in my opinion, unfortunately, he started dabbling with Salem Radio and dabbling in with those people, a group of people I personally don't care for. But that's where he started dabbling into the social kind of the like conservative social wars, and I believe the reason why is because like in the early days, even when Candace was with him, he'd get 100 or 200 people in the room, but really honestly, how many people are interested in Austrian economics, for one thing, and for two things, like charts of pension fund drop deads and stuff, kind of scary, not fun, and kind of mean spirited, saying that the boomers stole all the money, or however you want to phrase that. And that's kind of not Charlie, and I don't think that's what he meant with his message. What he meant is we better do something and we're running out of time, was his message. But somehow internet culture made it boomer bad. And I know that that's not what Charlie wanted. So I believe that um I think he had a little bit of a crisis, and I think that Candace has kind of referenced that he just had to do something different. And so he started reaching out to people in the social conservative world and started dabbling around in there, because ultimately the truth of the matter is with college kids are going to be, they like fighting in the culture war, and it's important. It's kind of, to me, being the Tea Party Charlie friend. almost astounding that he was able to master the whole culture war thing, because I find it very kind of frightening, because it's like got a lot of blurred lines for me as a Gen Xer,
Well,
you know,
yeah,
from the fashion industry.
I would just say this. I think that people that looked at the mission and saw what Charlie was able to provide, that he was speaking to people under the age of, 35, and that, to be fair, as you know, as our experiences too, boomers don't dig in. They have their mindset. They're not changing it easily. They have their ideas already planted. They're the older generation, so they feel like they've got the wisdom, and they're set in the reasons why they feel that the way that they do. Charlie was speaking to the younger class of people that are still molding their minds, still are able to like change their mind or look at something differently. I think that's just basically what it boiled down to, because older people are a lot more set in their ways. My dad's 81. I'm not changing his mind anytime soon about anything, and I'm his daughter. So, like, imagine being a stranger that's going to stand out there and say, "Hey, you've gotten your whole worldview wrong." They just dig in sometimes deeper. You know, I think that
Yeah,
could be a
I mean,
part
his
of it.
mission was always to save his generation. That's always been his mission. And sometimes I wonder if he read The Fourth Turning. I don't recall if I know if he did or not. I believe he did. And in The Fourth Turning, which is a very incredibly influential book, something that Glenn Beck pushed, who I know Charlie was close with Glenn Beck in the beginning. And in The Fourth Turning, each generation plays a role, and the millennial role is the hero. And I believe since then, the author of The Fourth Turning has written a book about how millennials have to pick up the ball and they're running out of time. Because as the old world crashes down around us, which we're seeing right now, the millennials have to, with the aid of Gen Xers, people a little bit older than them, are going to have to problem solve, fix problems, and they're going to have to build new institutions. So, new schools, new think tanks, new uh perhaps forms of government to move forward from the just burned out hull of what Charlie's been talking about in the beginning. We're literally out of money and out of time. I don't know how else to say it. And the
Hmm.
population um decrease doesn't support the system in place. There's no math that you can do to make it work. There's zero math you can do to make it work. And some people say that Trump's plan with the tariffs and incentivizing business, like to the point where it's almost ridiculous, is that this is the last exit on the highway where um the Austrian economics will work. Or another way to say that is the supply side grow out of it. Like, if we just could bring all this capital here and everyone started making lots of money, they could pay more money into the system and shore up the pension systems and shore up the healthcare and use innovation to fix healthcare so it costs less and cut things we don't need, like all of that kind of Republican world way of fixing things, aka, the other solution is Marxism, or just anarchy and just steal what you can get. um, we're kind of on the I mean, I don't know of any economist who believes anything other than we are on the last exit on this highway. And after the exponential growth that's accelerating at an accelerating rate cannot be fixed. And Charlie knows that. He's known that since he was in high school. He took it so seriously. And that's what this is all about. And why he kept saying people have to have babies and have a family, and you can't wait because you're waiting for the economy to get better. AKA, it's not going to get better. I mean, it will, but it's not going to be, you're not going to go back to the 1950s where we had money in the bank and we were riding high on, post-war industries, and, the streets were great and the bridges were great and the airports were great. And Everyone thought we were going to be, George Jetson world and all that. That's not happening. Not until we can get out of the hole, the burning dumpster fire that we're dealing with right now. I've known this my whole life too, as
Yeah,
a
so
Gen
let's
Xer.
let's leap forward though, and like, so what happened around Charlie's passing and stuff, kind of like what you were discussing yesterday. Or we're gonna be here for 4 hours because we've been
Okay,
40. It's done
so
been 40 minutes, and we're talking about a book.
right,
So
but you like this is a 40,000 view. I think Charlie panicked and Charlie decided that he had to go gung ho
Mhm.
and go with Trump because Trump was talking about the supply side pro growth. We're going to grow out of this. And that would appeal to Charlie, which no other candidate really, I think at that point thought it was possible. So, Charlie went ahead. Oop, did that work?
Yeah, I
And
saw it for a second.
yeah, okay. It was just slow.
Yeah, I saw it. It popped up after a second. Usually, there you go. It's
Okay.
on. Yeah.
I'm just used to my room or whatever. Okay.
It's okay.
So Turning Point, started taking on new types of, I'll call them Zionist Christian, pro-life, Zionist Jews. And you can say it's because he changed his message. You could also say it's because he got so big that he went into the matrix, which is something that Candace believes, and I believe
Hmm.
it's true.
Yeah.
Once you get big enough to actually influence a generation, the cabal
The
has to control you.
yeah, the vipers come out.
That's right. Just like
Yeah.
they say, after you make your first $10 million, you get a knock at the door. And
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, okay. So are you going to be a part of the club or no? And we're going to make you go through some humiliation rituals here and we're going to tie your ass down. And if you fight us, bad things are going to happen. I mean,
Charlie was dangerous because Charlie had a lot of influence. Charlie
yes.
could influence massive amounts of people. I have no doubt he's what won Trump the election this last time. His influence on the younger voters. Charlie was influential. And when you're looking at a country with a government that's largely controlled by lobbyists, special interests, large corporations, you look at somebody like Charlie, it's like we better get him on our team or we better try and ruin him so nobody joins him.
Right. And Candace Owen tells a story about how around a certain time when he switched his message and the rooms went from 100 people to 1,000 to a stadium,
Mm-hmm.
all these people started showing up and they were all part of this media groups. And it was Salem. Salem picked him up for a radio show. Okay. And he
Okay.
wanted to do it because Rush Limbaugh, he was a Rush baby.
Oh
He
yeah.
loved radio. And being in Chicago, you love radio. That's just a thing.
Did you see
So,
that clip where Glenn Beck brought Rush Limbaugh's microphone to the Charlie Kirk
yes,
podcast?
because
That was pretty lovely.
he was very close with
Hmm.
Glenn Beck. And Glenn Beck was very close to him because Glenn Beck, another Tea Party guy.
Well, I was
And
thinking more like the Rush Limbaugh side. Charlie really loved, like he really did
mhm.
respect Rush Limbaugh. But I also believe he developed that same kind of love for Trump, regardless of how you feel about Trump or what you think Trump is. Charlie learned to like really respect Trump and want to be around him. I mean, like he said it many times on many interviews he did. Like he was in a position where he had the president of the United States number in his phone, and he could pick it up and call it, and the president would actually answer. So there was, I think, a mutual respect on that end, and I hope it was amicable. Like I know Charlie's love for Trump was genuine, and I'm hoping that vice versa. Um, I'm hesitant to say because I just looking at the reaction after Charlie's death, and Trump is very stoic and he doesn't get emotional. He doesn't say a whole lot in general unless it has something to do with ratings on Apprentice or something. Then he has a lot to say. But like it did seem very dismissive almost in a way. And again, I can't tell you how people handle grief. I've had many people die around me, and I promise you, grief comes in different waves. And a lot of people don't overtly show their emotions. Some do, but I think that's where, but I know Charlie's love of him was like genuine. Charlie really believed in him. He really did. And he was honest if he had issues with him. Like he's famous. I just watched one of his back and forths on the college. Somebody asked him about the tariffs, and he was honest about it. He said, I don't know what the tariffs are going to do. He said, I'm hoping it's good for the country. He said, but I can't sit here and promise you that prices aren't going to get higher or whatever. Charlie was honest about it. That's why I think he was able to command such influence because he was honest. If he didn't know, he would say, I don't know. He would say, "This looks good, and I have to hope that it turns out okay." He would say that,
Right.
So
But again, going back to kind of the politics of it, Charlie had a set of donors, long-term mentors, and
mhm,
his own background where tariffs is like literally a cardinal sin.
yeah,
And that's how you know that he had a lot of respect for Trump, and so did a lot of other people, because
mhm,
they set aside their absolute abhorrent. It's like if the Austrian economics is your Bible, you couldn't get more sinful than tariffs. I mean,
yeah,
that's something I struggle with.
yeah,
And anyone who's, kind of from that fiscally conservative, traditional GOP background. And so these people that attack Trump and freak out and all this stuff, like I kind of give them a little grace because
yeah,
it's a struggle. Their whole lives they were told that's the worst possible thing you can do. So we'll see what happens. I'm not convinced one way or another. It makes sense on paper. And so far it's actually working in a way.
mhm.
But long term, um, can you expect the rest of the world now to kind of, in a sense, pay America back for all we did for them?
Right. Look how
The
far
minute
we're in
Trump's
debt.
gone, that's not going to happen. I
Yeah,
mean, that's where I'm kind of like, I hope we bring in so much money on that deal, and on the way out the door, Trump puts a big fat deposit down on something that the deep state can't get a hold of, but that it will benefit the American people, which is why I was talking about that sovereign wealth fund. Because any money he's putting in the bank, the deep state is dying to get that money back and money launder it around the world like they do. So I mean Charlie's smart enough that he understood all of this. And
agree.
I think he that Trump was a mentor. Trump believes in that power of positive thinking. Trump probably um talked to him about the flaws in Austrian economics, showed him a whole new world. And Trump, I mean, to Charlie's credit, even though it's hard to change your ways, Charlie was smart enough that if someone convinced him of something, he would go full bore on it.
I believe that it has to do with Charlie, like just like with an Elon Musk backing him. It had to do with the bigger picture of saving the country, and we can worry about the other things like the other things that are just are important, but down the road. First, we kind of need to focus on saving our country and not driving us off a cliff. But just keep printing money, going into debt, fighting endless wars, securing a border, like things like that. Those are things that I think, along with a lot of other people, they were like, okay, I can set aside my differences here because we got bigger problems, in this
Yeah.
country.
So, um, so anyway, so skipping ahead, so I feel like I've kind of, okay, let me just finish with laying the groundwork.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I believe, so in the end, so Charlie has got two masters. He has his Austrian economics Tea Party masters who are questioning him about Trump and tariffs, probably big time. And then he has another set of masters now that came in through the new emphasis on social conservatism and Christianity, which was definitely I mean, for a person like me, I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? I'm not saying I didn't want him talking about it. He
Mhm.
never once mentioned it before. But
Well,
nobody did. Nobody
well,
did.
I'll insert
Because
two
that was
things.
just not part of the GOP message, like not even at all.
Well, I'll insert two things here that I believe that could just kind of nip it in the bud, and it could be wrong, but like this is what I see. TP USA Faith launched in August of 2022, and if you look at Charlie's life, Charlie had started all this at 18, but what had happened to him until the launch of like kind of getting more faith based and incorporating that TP USA, getting married, having children. I think that's where he's maybe could have been a reason why he incorporated his faith in there as well. Now, set aside, I'm not saying I think TP USA Faith was not could have not also not been full of a bunch of vipers that had, you know what I mean, that was
Well,
all using
absolutely is
Charlie and
filled
all
with
that. So
vipers.
I'm just saying, as far as him bringing up faith more, that could have actually been genuine in Charlie because of the life changes with a family and a wife and kids, and then that was
Right.
kind of
And so
lassoed and.
this is a mixture that anybody will tell you that if you have a think tank and you start taking money from the social conservatives, your life changes in every possible way. Because when you have donors that are interested in, for example, pension fund drags and stuff like that, asking someone to do a spreadsheet is like one kind of pressure. When you have people who are like sort of in the pro-life, let's spread Christianity, let's have kids and that, all super important and stuff. I never worked anywhere that focused on that, so this is where I'm really not sure. But what I do know is people who do work with those people, it's like not about spreadsheets anymore. It's a lot of emotions, a lot of like religion, make people, it's their core beliefs. It's a totally different level than a donor calling and saying, hey, can you throw together the spreadsheet by 3 o'clock? I'm doing a presentation at this bank. That's a totally different world. And they're, I wouldn't say those two groups are in conflict exactly, but in a sense they are. And once this war started in Israel,
Hmm.
they definitely were in conflict.
Hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
people's emotions got insanely out of control. And this stuff became like, this is unbelievable. I don't know if you saw this today. Um, so yesterday I was talking about that like online and I guess in real life, Netanyahu flooded the zone with that money where they're geofencing Christian churches
Are you
to
meaning to
get
share
people's cell
something?
phone data. Huh?
Are you meaning to share something?
Well, I'll show you that if you haven't
Okay.
seen it.
And I was like, well, you would start, you kind of pause like you're pulling something up, and I was like, well, maybe something's frozen. Maybe I need to say
No.
something.
So this is real. You can see it's from Farah.com. This is a Farah
Hmm.
um document from Show Faith by Works LLC. This is the kind of stuff that's going on in Christian world.
Oh yeah, I know
And
all about
nobody
show
talks
face.
about it. And it
They're
drives me
influencing the
crazy.
churches. They've got a list of all these churches in Texas and California that they're
Right.
going to
This is
pour
this
money into
this is where
influence.
that list is from. So you can see the foreign principal is Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay. And then you can look and see that they had to apply as a foreign influence operation. So all the names are here and everything.
Oh
And
yeah.
this is just from 9/26/2025.
Hmm. Yeah, Ian Carroll went over some of these. See, they
Right.
have the list of all the churches. They're like somebody needs to reach out. These
Yes.
they red
So
flag the
what they're
churches.
doing is that Israel depends on Christians and they have a whole bunch of churches. This goes back to like the 60s, that a lot of Christian churches have partnerships with Israel. It's sort of like in the way a lot of cities have a sister city in China where they are using whatever hooks they can use to make sure that there's going to be a group of people that they can depend on to help them lobby for money to keep Israel's Iron Dome built and keep these wars in the Middle East going on and whatever else is going on, right? So
Hmm.
Christian outreach through various grassroots and digital targeting of Christians in the Western U.S. We will create a mobile museum to display at churches, Christian colleges, and Christian events. There you go, Charlie Kirk. We will target and distribute pro-Israel information online and through targeted geofencing and digital online tools. I mean, it's unbelievable. We will have teams of people reaching out to churches and pastors and possibly even Christian social media influencers. Some of this is still undecided and fluid. And this just goes on. And they talk about the costs of the geofencing, the costs of the Israeli van, like mobile museum, I guess, that would be in church parking lots. I mean, for me, this is just, why is this not the biggest topic in the Christian world? I talk about this all day, every day, 10, 20 times a day in chats, live streams, and on social media.
Yeah, people
Like,
have
this
talked about it.
document is all I talk about. Like, are you okay with being geofenced? I'll tell
Yeah.
you know who wouldn't be okay with this? Charlie Kirk. He's freedom dude. This is
Yeah.
not something he would approve of, but they were doing it anyway. And so this is the conflict here. And so, if you go all the way down to the end of this, Charlie Kirk's own church is on this list of hundreds and hundreds of churches, basically all of Arizona, all of Colorado, and I think it was Texas, all of Texas, like every church they could find, and California.
Yeah.
And so this is how paranoid or controlling that this Jewish lobby is, to keep Christianity as basically a tool for wars in the Middle East and the Jewish cause, which, I'll just say flat out, I'm just sort of neutral on the Jewish thing. I don't think anyone should be killed anywhere. I don't think people should be persecuted for their bloodlines. That's like pro-medieval, ancient world kind of stuff. I think everyone should just do their thing. I just don't care. But I definitely don't want my butt located by any freaking group and then have my cell phone flood me with propaganda for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and I just highlighted to show like it's not like a denomination. They're not targeting every church.
Right, but there's the cavalry churches.
Mm-hmm.
This is all these people that came in through the cavalry church thing, which was a new wave church from the 60s, according to Candace, which I haven't really looked into that deeply, starting in California.
Yeah, it's about the 7 mountains of
Yep.
influence. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know who else talks about that? Speaker Johnson, the 7 Mountain thing. And this is all political. And so people who think that, oh, I'm just a good Christian, I don't vote because I don't want to be political, they're geofencing you in your church. You're so political and you don't even know it. Like, it makes me totally crazy. It really does.
Well, this is how propaganda works. You think you're going into church to hear the message of God, and what you don't realize is that pastor's being paid to push a message onto you.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I watched earlier today. I don't even know how they get away with it. I feel so. I'm a Christian, and I mean I've been a Christian my whole life, baptized, all that here in the South. I am disheartened. I watched uh, he gave a sermon, that Rob McCoy guy, because there's a lot been going on around him, and I want to know people. I don't want to just make assumptions. But he gave a whole sermon behind the podium. He did it a lot for Charlie's death, and now after it, where he like spent the whole time talking about like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and like and I'm like, what are you doing? Is that spreading the message of Jesus? Like, he's turned his whole pulpit into a political style. I was like, what? Why was his congregation not be sitting around going, are we at church? Or are we at at the presidential debate? Like, where, you know what I mean? Like, where are we right now? I would be really wondering why somebody's bringing up an argument that's happening online between when you go to church.
Yes. And so people, so, okay. So let's just go to Israel, then we'll circle back to Charlie. So,
Yeah.
unbelievably, Laura Loomer went to Israel. Okay. I'm going to go here. Laura Loomer went to
do it.
Israel. After the spending the last week in Israel along the Syrian border, I've reached a firm conclusion. Israel must end its dependence on U.S. aid, and the U.S. must end all aid to Israel. So this is, in my opinion, a result of the fact that the entire internet exploded when they saw this contract that they're being geofenced. When all the politicians stopped bowing to this war in Israel, when Trump refused to do long-term regime change in Iran and only did the one bombing run and told Netanyahu to his face, it's over. It also is because Netanyahu now is his own government's probably going to bring him up on war crimes because they claim he started the war by telling the military to stand down when the terrorists came over the wall, which I have no idea, but that day seems a little hanky to me.
Oh no, they've admitted to it. Even the
You
mouthpiece
know,
for the IDF that's gone over there is like got the American folded flag behind him, and an Israeli that Tommy G interviewed admitted to it. He was in the, and he's a mouthpiece for them, the judge support. And then you've had IDF soldiers testifying from the Kemet. Is it the Kemet? I never said that right. That saying that they were gave orders to stand down. And the weird part is in that Tommy G video, Tommy G says to him, "Hey, I've heard that you were given stand down orders. Is that true?" And he shakes his head and goes, "No." And then I swear to you, Aaron, I could show you the clip. Commences to stand, but his own squadron were told to stand. He said, "But you know, my troop was told to stand down because we were worried about people coming in from the north." Which again, I totally get. But why would somebody ask you a direct question, you deny it, and then commits to confirming it the very next sentence? So there was a stand down order. There's maybe reasons for that. I'm not saying that, but anybody that says there wasn't, there definitely was.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the politics in Israel are evil. You know, now we're finding out this, former prime minister was like living at Jeffrey Epstein's house, the quote unquote left. So it seems like their left is disgusting. And I know they go tear up Roman temples and stuff because some of the, they're crazy. Their far right also tears up stuff and is crazy, very radical religiously. And the whole country just seems like it's kind of like here where everyone's at each other's throats. I believe they're protesting again in Israel today, massive protests again. So Israel's not in good shape to begin with. And I think Netanyahu thought he could bring his people together by overthrowing Iran, and Trump wouldn't have it. And now, so Laura Loomer goes to Israel, tells Netanyahu that America's a no-go and you better like start taking care of yourself. So Netanyahu, there was a news story saying that Laura Loomer's lying, and Netanyahu came out on air and said, no, we are not seeking long-term U.S. military aid anymore. Okay,
Yep.
and here he
There's the
is
clip.
saying it right on TV.
Yeah,
Do you want me to play this?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Because I had it pulled too if you had, but go, yeah, a little bit for sure. There's no sound, my dear. You gotta share your sound. Aaron, you gotta share your sound, hon.
Sorry.
It's okay. Hey, we all make those rookie mistakes. I've been doing this 8 years and I will still do it every once in a while. But I think it's important for sure to add context to what you're saying. He
Right.
did
So
say it
what's
out of
so
his own
funny
mouth.
is they delayed this interview. Listen to the very beginning. They delayed the interview for this news to drop in an article.
Yep.
Few moments late, clearly running a country, so you're forgiven, but I'm glad you were because this headline just dropped and I want to start the interview by asking for your reaction to it. It's on the Axios news site and it says, Scoop, Israel seeks 20-year military aid deal with US with America first tweaks. Is that correct?
I don't know what they're talking about. My direction is the exact opposite. When I first became prime minister, in 1996, I went to the U.S. Congress, and we were receiving financial aid and military aid. And I said, the first thing is, we're going to build a high-tech, free market capitalist economy. We don't need the financial aid. Phase it out. And everybody gasped. How dare he, this young prime minister, eager for a PR title. He's giving up billions of dollars. And I was happy to do it, and I was right to do it. So we got rid of that. Now I want to make our arms industry independent, totally as independent as possible. So my direction is the exact opposite. I don't know who's talking for Israel. I do. So follow what I say, not what is put forward in some leaks that are not true.
So, Prime Minister, you think it's time to cut military aid entirely from the US?
I think it's time to assure that Israel is independent. Understand that our military aid is like a fraction, a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what the U.S. spent in Afghanistan or spent in, in the Middle East. It's tiny. But, I think that we have a very strong economy. We have a very strong arms industry. And it's true that even though we get what we get, which we appreciate, 80% of that is spent in the United States. So it produces jobs in the United States. But nevertheless, I'd like to see a much more independent Israeli, and even more independent Israeli defense industry.
So you can see that Trump was controlling him by saying, well, if we don't give you the missiles for your Iron Dome, like a lot of people are going to die. Oh, we're out of them. Trump kept saying we're out of them. The shelf is bare and that. And he doesn't like it. He realizes that by having that dependence, Israel is, got a problem, is weak, is our bitch. So he doesn't want that anymore. And I think Laura Loomer, and this is right after Laura Loomer went and talked to him. And then, here's
well,
Loomer.
let me interject. Yeah, before you play that, I just want to say, to back you up, where I actually found that clip, because after our conversation yesterday, I went on the hunt for it, right, to prepare for today. I found it inside of a clip from a woman that says the IDF just told Trump no thank you, and Netanyahu planned the entire move. She's an Israeli that played that clip, and at the end of it, she says, I'm almost 100% assured that they leaked that article so Netanyahu could come out. She said, because y'all know how I feel. I love Netanyahu. She's like, but he has a great way of controlling the media. And she said, I believe they leaked that so he could come out and say what he's saying, because we all know. And listen,
Absolutely.
I was that woman by the end of it. I done commented on her video because she was like, well, Americans are going to complain or whatever, and we just need to be. And I was like, how ungrateful can you be? We have a country that's propped up your little tiny country over there for 60 years, and your attitude's going to be like, we don't need y'all. I'm like, well, that's convenient. Should have known that about $200 million ago, but whatever. Anyway, so go ahead. Yeah, this is interesting too.
Then Bannon asked Laura Loomer about her trip and how she talked to Netanyahu, and all of a sudden all this stuff's happening.
I don't like her.
America is built on hard work and powered by American
It's all good.
energy.
Listen, Howard, look at that. Chevron, wash the ducks off when you spill it in
There you go.
ocean.
Peace in Gaza. Blah, blah, blah. That money is out there, man.
Mass execution. Laura Loomer joins us. This is the reason I love Laura Loomer.
Oh, God.
Courage.
Steve.
Courage is the virtue of which all the other virtues rest. And one thing you say about Loomer, she's one of the most courageous people I know, an absolute warrior. So, Laura, I just want to start off. I mean, your bona fides as being one of the leading voices of anti-Muslim brotherhood, of radical Islam. I mean, you've been sued. You've had to pay fines. Nobody came to your defense. One of the biggest defenders of Israel, one of the biggest defenders of the Jewish people. But always in a context, you put it in a context. One of the biggest contexts is about the Muslim Brotherhood and what they're trying to do around Israel with all these radical Turk, Muslim, and Arab nations.
See, they're bringing up
On
Turkey
Tuesday,
again.
I believe it was, you came out with a couple of tweets, but you talked about the sovereignty of Israel and to really have Israel not be a protectorate or, quote unquote, not be the greatest ally, but to be an independent or sovereign nation, and needed to stop this $4 billion a year, whatever the number is, of American arms. And it needed really to make a statement that you're an independent nation and you're going to make your own independent decisions. And hey, you're always an ally of the United States, but you're an ally like any independent nation, any sovereign nation. On Thursday morning, Axios, who I think is pretty dialed in over there, has this article, scoop, exclusive, that there is now a 20-year deal that is the 20-year memorandum of understanding that there would be the commitment of the $4 billion or $5 billion, whatever it is, for 20 years that would have some tweaks of some America First language in it, but essentially would be doubling down on basically Israel's protectorate. And as I read that, I go, gosh, I think they took Laura Loomer pretty seriously, because somebody senior in the Israeli government just put a shot across her bow, and they did an Axios. Now, 2 minutes after Axios, the Times of Israel, every big paper had it, and this thing had been briefed. You could tell they were talking to senior people in the Netanyahu government. Then yesterday afternoon, an Australian reporter who
well,
we
I
know did an
texted you
interview
first.
with,
I told you that the story was fake news.
Oh, yeah,
I said that,
yes. I should say she texted me and said this story is totally phony. It's false. It's not happening. Then a couple hours later, Bibi came out and said, absolutely, it's false. In fact, and we'll play the Bibi thing in a little while. In fact, we're essentially embracing Laura Loomer's plan. We need our own independence, our own sovereignty. We don't need the money. We want to wean ourselves off it. So just walk us through behind the scenes. What in the hell happened in Israel this week that you started this kind of movement to, get your sovereignty? But there's obviously some senior folks somewhere that convinced Axios and the Times of Israel that, in fact, the exact opposite was happening, ma'am.
well, obviously, we've seen a pivot, right, Steve? There's a lot of anti-Israel rhetoric on the left and also now on the right, where we're seeing extreme hostility towards not just the state of Israel, but also Jewish people. I called this Israel derangement syndrome, and I know you and I kind of got into a back and forth last time I was on your show. But my point was that, we need to start focusing on the bigger picture. People want to criticize Israel. When you break down the number and you look at the actual numbers of aid, the value of aid, you have $3.8 billion per year. Sometimes it's 3.3, sometimes it's 3.8 that we give Israel. Now, there was a report, Steve, that came out the other day that showed that our return on that investment is about $48 billion a year, whether that's through weapons sales or technology or, investments in pharmaceuticals, whatever it may be. We certainly get a lot more out of our relationship with Israel than we give to Israel every single year. However, doesn't matter what the numbers are. There's no convincing a very large fraction of Gen Z and also a growing number of leftists and also conservatives that our relationship with Israel is beneficial.
So notice how they say there's no convincing Gen Z. And this is why they've been attacking Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson, who talked to Nick Fuentes, who I have problems with, but some of his message is quite accurate.
He's speaking to the younger crowd.
That's right. That's what they're worried about.
I want to say one thing before we I want to say, number one, shot across the bow with what? American missiles, because it's all our weaponry. Number two, I like to go back and listen. I mean, I don't mean literally, but he framed it as, we don't need the money. We're going to need to wean ourselves off of it. Yep. You don't need the money, then why are you weaning yourself?
Because they have to start building the missiles themselves.
I will believe it when I see it. This is a talking point to try and get the dogs off the scent. They have no intentions of stopping taking American money. I don't believe that
that'll
for
be
a
up
minute.
to Congress.
Yeah, I don't believe it for a minute.
Congress will either put the money in the spending bill or they won't.
That's what I'm saying, though. I don't believe it for a minute. Netanyahu probably said that to save face because he knows what the narrative looks like right now. And I really wish people would stop saying Israel or the Jews. The Americans' problem, as far as I'm concerned, is with the Israeli government, is with Netanyahu.
But that's not true.
People. Well,
there are people who are out there talking about bloodlines and
but I don't talk
all this religious aspect of
I'm not talking about fringe people. There you can find racists too. I'm not saying most people's issues with this topic is with that government. It's not with the country, right? It's with that government. So yeah, can you find me an anti-Semite? Of course. Same way I can probably go find you a racist. I'm just talking about in general when this conversation comes up. Anybody that tries to talk about the Netanyahu government is called an anti-Semite. They did it to Charlie.
But yes, so anyone who's okay, so this is where we move to now. So who's being attacked? So Tucker's being attacked. And I think everyone already knows that story, that they're trying to get him off the air. They're attacking him. As of today, they're attacking his son and his brother. I guess his son likes Fuentes. They also, so here's this guy who's been around forever. I can't say I'm a big fan, but I know who he is. Elijah Schaefer. He
Yeah,
like
getting
writes. I think
sued.
he's been on like Breitbart. Anyway,
He's getting sued right now by Cash Patel's girlfriend for
that's
$5
right.
million.
All right, Cash Patel's girlfriend suing this guy, and then you find out, oh, well, this guy's also one of these people that the donors at TPUSA said can't be on the stage anymore, just like Tucker, just like Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, all these people, those donors.
And let me
This
just say real,
guy,
real quick I'm going to say a shout out to Erica, his like wife. There's a lot of stuff buzzing around about her. And I don't know. I've dug into some of her and I've not spoken out of respect for her because Southern people, you respect the dead. That's his wife. They've got children. I'm reserving my comments for that trial for that one. But like to her credit, Charlie said it in those text messages they tried to mock Candace about. She don't know nothing. And she showed the text message. That's exactly what Charlie was saying. Like he's going to lose a $2 million donor because of about put platform and Tucker, whatever. And
right,
then he
but
said,
they
I'm
gave
thinking
that.
about bringing. Let me just finish. I'm thinking about bringing Candace back. Okay, so to credit to Erica, who is now the CEO of TPUSA, they are still putting Tucker out on that stage, even though they know it's making at least some faction of this donor base upset. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So this is interesting because he says, thanks to Charlie Kirk for always giving me a huge platform, 10,000 students, even though middle management was blacklisting me from speaking at the events over my views on Israel. 2 weeks before he was murdered, I was offered an olive branch back into the fold. So now this is another person telling the exact same story about how this intervention happened and that people who had been with Turning Point for a long, long time were blacklisted. This word middle management is new. So this is not donors. This is middle management. We need to find out who middle management is.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from today.
And I
Okay.
believe that this is just even further proof that Charlie was practicing what he preached. He said it before he died, and all throughout he said that you combat speech you don't like with more
That's right.
speech. You do it on the stage of ideas. You debate your ideas with somebody else, like what me and you do. And while we're sitting here right now, me and you can disagree on things, but I don't lose any respect for you when we hang up our calls or we stop talking. I just know that we see things differently for whatever reason. Maybe I've not done enough research or you're not seeing it from my point of view, whatever the case may be. That was always Charlie's argument. And I think he got so sick of being called an anti Semite, and Charlie, who had spoken out for Israel for years, defending it and everything. Then he starts getting questions on college campuses, and he does what Charlie always does. He has a conversation with somebody. He doesn't start name calling them, but that's exactly what they did to him. So I think Charlie was doing what Charlie he was rebelling. He was like, "You're not going. I've built this from the ground up. My blood and sweat and tears. I'm the spokesperson. I'm going to go ahead and have these conversations. TPUSA is nothing about Charlie, and it's not going to be unless they're lucky enough to find a half of who he was." And I've yet to see it. I pray for them it happens. They need some house cleaning for sure, and we're going to probably get into that. But Charlie was doing what Charlie always said. I think he was bringing the people back around. He'd always told to silence, sit down, shut up, don't bring him around. And he was like, no, this is what I'm being questioned on. Let them sit down with somebody else that knows this topic. That's how, if Israel's going to win on these viewpoints, they're going to have to sit down and have these conversations without calling people names and just answer people. Maybe it's as simple as that. Like I've said,
Right.
Israel from the get-go should have brought it. Like, look what we did with 9/11. Were we drug into a war through lies? Yes. But what Americans knew was on that day, over 3,000 of our citizens were taken out by terrorists. And then we launched into a 20-year war over it to make those effers pay for what they had done on American soil. So they could have took that narrative, what happened on October 7th to 1,200 Jewish people, and said, hell hath no fury like, a people scorned. You know what I mean? But they didn't take that. They was like, oh, we're the most ethical. We're not doing anything wrong. It was like, come on now. Like, just be honest about it. And people, I think that's where the narrative got mixed up. And sometimes I just wish they would be more on the angle of, when you attack our country, we're mad. There's some justice going to be served, and everybody doesn't have to agree or like our justice, but this is the justice that we want to have, right? And then let the world decide, which is kind of what's happening. They don't like that either. So anyway, go ahead. Just wanted to say that because this is Charlie to me, Charlie being true to who he said he was.
Right. But to me, it's really, so Charlie, I thought was crazy. Like, he's like, he uses these weird words that are Jewish, like Shabbat or whatever. And like, I'm like, okay,
he was writing
never
a book,
did that
supposedly.
before. I don't know what this is about. But anyway, but here's something really important. From my research, the whole Israel thing is an Israel thing, but it's an Israel thing because people are manipulated emotionally by religion, and religion is sort of a captured audience that they've captured the media and the narrative on. But behind that, the people hiding behind that are these freaking, what I call revenge motive, many of them Jewish people who have generational beefs with Israel, with just the Middle East and the formation of Israel, the whole Zionist mindset or belief system.
Which is
and
crazy.
That's also
to
a whole
me.
part of the Ukraine thing, too.
Yeah, but again, which is crazy to me. 70% of people in Israel are secular. They don't believe in God. 70% of the people that live in Israel
but
have no belief system at all.
Being Jewish, only half of people consider that a religious thing. It's a bloodline thing.
Oh, I know. And that's what you bring that up, and listen, you bring that up in your blood libeling, right? It's like, which is it?
Right.
Like,
this is more like,
you're not wrong.
Right. This is more like Scottish clans, or what is it? The McCoys versus the whatever.
Hatfield versus the McCoys.
Yes.
They killed a pig.
It has
all
nothing
over a pig.
to do with religion. It's our land, and we're taking it back. And it's not about, no one's sitting around, though for the secular Jews, they're not sitting around reading the Torah or anything else. It's about revenge. And so you got Randy Weingarten, you got the Pritzkers, you have a whole host of people. What's her name? Kaiser and Victoria Newland and her husband Kaiser. Okay, all of them are revenge motive Ukrainians. And I just say this, having my dad's father Slavic, and he grew up in Skokie, Illinois, famous from the Blues Brothers. What was the theme of the Blues Brothers? Nazis can't march in Skokie, Illinois. Why? Skokie, Illinois had Ukrainian and Russian signs on their stores. That's how Eastern European it was. And half the people there, if not more, were Jewish, and the others were refugees that escaped before the Soviet Union, for example. So
yeah, but before we
I
get
know
past
about
it.
I mean, people say that epigenetics, that if you're a people who's traumatized, and in theory you're traumatized since the Roman era, that's actually literally passed on in your genetics to be in a heightened state of fight or flight. And you see it in people, and I have some sympathy for that, but you can't ruin our country with it. We're not here to settle that bloodlust. America's not
Erin, let me just interject real quick. Let me just interject. Okay, I just want to say quickly, because you made points that I want to address, because this is what happens with us, so I got to pump. You said that the over the land, but they're not religious. But that's the point that I don't think anybody understands. A lot of religious people here in America, because we're going to talk about America, we're both Americans. A lot of religious people in America tie it biblically to it's the land of the Jews, the chosen people, even though we get the Scofield Bible. This is not that conversation. That's a whole other topic. But that's the problem. is that you're not wrong. That a lot of Jewish people in Israel believe that they have a right to that land, but the only thing that gives them the right to that land is biblical, is in the Torah. So you have a non-religious people, 70% of them, still tying their rights to a land using a religiosity to do it, but they don't even believe in a God.
Right, and
So that's
that's
all I
why
wanted
I
to ask. Go
say
ahead.
that behind the whole Zionism thing or Jewish Christian alliance, however you want to put it, that most Christians view through a religious, justifiably and historically, they're not fools. They just view it through the religious lens. But
Mhm.
many of these big players, like the Pritzkers and that, do you
Mhm.
think that Pritzkers, well, Jews don't really pray, but do you think he's into the religious aspect of this? No. He wants to steal everything out of Ukraine. He wants to crush all these Arabs who sided with the Nazis. This is a bloodlust thing with him. I could be wrong, but when's the last time you saw him in a synagogue or serving food to needy Jews or anything like that? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Penny
I don't
Pritzker
disagree at all.
Penny
I believe that
Pritzker,
people.
his own sister, made a speech, and she admitted in the speech, I am here for revenge. She was there with BlackRock to buy everything in Ukraine. She said it
Okay,
out
let me. I
loud.
know. Well, let me just say this. I don't disagree with you at all. I think people of God. This could be applied to Muslims or Christians or Jews, and I say this as a Christian, that what they don't know their religion until they use it as a shield or a sword, and then all of a sudden they want to bring up religion. They don't practice any kind of religious practice. They don't pray. To your point, they don't go to synagogue. They don't do any fellowshipping, anything like that. But the minute they're challenged on an idea, it's their right, their holy right. So I agree 100%.
So another way of saying that is that there is a direct, if you had a Zen, if you had like there is a direct correlation in between what we call neocons are directly related to revenge motive Jews. There's a direct relationship. And so when we're talking about the war with Israel, not the religious part of it, not like the biblical who gets what, biblically. When we're just talking about bombing Iran, removing the leadership there, and then strip mining the place for every drop of oil and every mineral or whatever's there.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the neocons, many of which are revenge motive Jews. They're Trotskyites. Um, and I guess the word's not Jews. They're people who have a score to settle either for or against the Jews. But the one thing that unites them is they want to be at war all the time. And you can see how George Bush was born again Christian, and he went right down that road. See what I mean? There's like a partnership there. And I'll be honest, I don't know all the history of it. But all I know is everything that's happening in Ukraine is like 3 Jewish families who all had horrible things happen. And
And
we got
you brought up
to
such a
them
good
in that
point there.
region, like it to their grandparents.
You brought up such a good point there, but I think that always plays in the back of my mind. Look at the one thing we're not talking about right now is everybody's fighting over their position on Israel, fighting over what's happening in Gaza or Iran. Is anybody talking about Ukraine anymore or Russia?
Well,
So there's
that's
a
falling
war
apart.
going
I
on.
mean, that's
But you know
falling
what? To your
apart.
point, look at all the
Yes.
bio weapons, the facilities that where they found in Ukraine, sponsored by America. First, they told us there was none. Then all of a sudden, it was 11. Then on finally the testimony, I think Rubio's the one that said it. I believe he was that there was like upwards of over 40, 42 or 44. I can't really remember that were in Ukraine when we were first told there were none. And so, like, there's all these things and we all know that Ukraine is a very corrupt country. They always have been. And then look what Zelensky's doing right now to the Christians in Ukraine. And but these are
Yes.
things that but Trump's talking about the Christians and where was the last one at in Africa? And I'm thinking
Africa.
Nigeria. Yeah. So like, but screw all the Christians in Ukraine. where we actually have put American boots on the ground over there. You would think we don't even have to. We could just swing them around to protect a church or give a scolding to
Well,
Zelensky that we're also funding the war for. I wonder
they're
why America's
folding they're
broke.
folding up Zelensky. So that we won't get into that news. That happened last night.
No, yeah. I'm only point I'm making is that there's a lot of things on the global scale that Americans are tired of paying for. And sometimes I
Yes.
think the argument on this side of arguing against the continuing funding of Israel, I wish people would just start saying as well as Ukraine, as well as funding Ukraine's endless war with Russia, whatever. We're just done funding everybody else's problems or their wars, whatever you want to call it, their economies, but keeping Egypt happy and Jordan happy. But like we're paying them off to be friends with Israel, like that. Americans, well, we've just bumped up to 50-year mortgages on home loans. We've got 30-year-olds still living with their parents, working 2 full-time jobs. That's the problems Americans want focused on. It has nothing to
That's
do with
right.
it's Israel, Ukraine, or
Mm-mm.
Uganda, or wherever. That's how this I think conversation should be framed, not between us, but I mean in general.
Yes, and Trump actually and his minions running around are doing a masterful job of
Yeah, good.
actually shutting all this down, but without saying that that's what's happening.
Got
So
it.
people don't see it. But going
Hmm.
back to our friend here, Elijah. So Elijah, this goes on. Again, this is from today, and it says, I was stoked to reconnect with Charlie and reform our relationships on so many TPUSA chapters and have invited me to speak, considering I was no longer blacklisted by bitter middlemen. Yikes. So we got a target here we got to find.
Yeah, I wonder if it's down, if he answered it below, but keep going, please. We'll finish
Well,
this and we'll look.
good thing I spoke to TPUSA recently, waited a while after 9/10, so it'd be Charlie shot. And the invitation is still open. I'll be making content at Amfest, there to meet you all and continue to support Charlie's legacy. So that means Erica, I'm just going to say, maybe I'm wrong, but if Erica's in charge, it would have been on her desk, and Erica is in for the fight on this
That's what I'm saying. That's why I
topic.
stopped. That's why I said what I did earlier with
And that's
you
why
when it
people are
came to Tucker.
demonizing her.
Well, that's what I said earlier when I did with Tucker.
Okay. So then it says, shout out to everyone at TPUSA for your hard work. We may not all see eye to eye, but one thing is for damn sure, all these people trying to deplatform, censor, blacklist, and silence Tucker, along with everyone who thinks similarly like myself, is not what Charlie stood and fought for.
Agreed.
Okay, I mean this is a direct. You're gonna be shocked at the end of the story. Okay, you're gonna
No,
be shocked.
I'm ready, girl.
The leadership at TPUSA will never get it perfect, as nobody can replace Kirk, but they are doing a really great job keeping his final version alive. Interesting final version, meaning he saw the light that he was being manipulated, right?
Hmm.
Praise God to his legacy, and we all still are grieving his loss of life. Thank you to Tyler Boyer. So
Mm.
he's not the bad guy, according to this Elijah. And Andrew Colvett, the guy who did turn over Josh Hammer's veiled threats or whatever, and that whole thing. Andrew Colvett is the one who told us about it and turned over all those chats to the authorities. So it's not Colvett. For always being
Well, again,
real.
let me just real quick. The Andrew Clovet. Now he's the one. I don't know enough about Tyler Boyd. There's some questions there for me, so I won't agree with you fully there. But Andrew Colvett, the text message that Candace showed on her show where Charlie said that about being bullied and the $2 million, Andrew come out on TPUSA during Charlie's podcast and said those were screen grabs that he had taken and sent to the authorities, sent to the FBI. Why would Andrew Colvett send that to the FBI if he didn't want them looking into that, what Charlie was feeling like was a coming threat? And somehow Candace got those. So I agree with you. I believe that Andrew watched what happened to kind of Charlie. Let's just say something nefarious, right? Let's go to the end where we're not there yet, but let's, for the sake of argument, that Andrew knows how dangerous people can be if you don't get in the party line, and now Andrew knows what position. So maybe he's having to play this game, safely. where he's, you know what I mean, trying to have big
Right. I
covert
don't think
things.
he's even playing a game. I mean, he's a spokesperson. He's trained about keeping your mouth shut unless you need to address something. And so I
Well,
don't really put any shade on him at all. A lot of people put shade on Tyler Boyer, who some people are saying he's a child molester. Now, I
I don't
don't
know
know
about all
about
that.
that.
Yeah.
But he's an Illinois guy. So I think he's been with Charlie the longest. He got moved to running Turning Point Action, the
Oh yeah.
ballot chasers. Okay.
Hmm.
Andrew Colvett was Charlie's spokesperson, a press person who worked, I believe, in California. And then he was promoted to being the producer of the radio show when Charlie got the radio show with Salem Network. So, I don't know either personally, like I said, but both of them, yeah, are everyone targets them. And it's very interesting that this guy is specifically saying they're the good guys. So that right there tells you something about the kind of information coming in on Candace's tip line, and that a lot of it is these Israel people throwing flack out there. I mean, you
Well, I mean,
literally can't
but
look at Twitter without just bursting into tears. Every single post is
I
about
don't.
how evil Tyler Bower is, Andrew
Yeah, but hold
Colvin
on,
is,
hang on, just
Tucker
pump the brakes.
Carlson
Pump the
is.
brakes 1 second. But how you just frame that means that you have to believe everything that Elijah Schaefer just said. You're like, look what he just posted. Therefore, this means. I mean, that's if you take into account that everything he just said here. If you look at the first comment below that post, it's like somebody's explaining why he was kicked off is because he
Well,
stayed after underage drinking parties and cheated on his wife. So, like, you know what I mean? Like that person could be lying too, but I'm just saying, I don't, I like to dig into things where I just believe a Twitter post. Is there truth to that? Maybe, but I'm not going to take one person's word over another just because they posted it on freaking X.
okay,
Sorry,
so
I need to dig a
this
little
guy
deeper.
plants this out there,
Yep, yep.
okay, and this guy's being sued by Cash's wife. How is that? How is a guy involved in this story also involved in Cash's wife? Oh, the Israel thing, right? These lawyers and people who Netanyahu's paying for this uh, influencer operation that are, and I'm going to say they're the never Trumper, neocon, revenge motive people who really wanted this war in Israel. I mean, in Iran.
Hmm.
Uh, it's toxic, so toxic that this guy's left the country. Thank you, Bukele, for Safe Haven. This is a place for everyone who wants to make the world a better place. With modern governments that turn on their people, Bukele has transformed this nation into a shining light of freedom and safety.
Oh, I thought you said that was Matt Gates that
Matt
went to.
Gates is in. Everybody's there.
Yeah,
George
okay. I was going to say,
Papadopoulos
I thought I
and
remember you
his
saying
wife
about
is
Matt
there.
Gates. That might say a whole lot about
They're
people
all
feeling like they're
hiding
under
there
threat.
because
Oh,
they
yeah.
think they're going to kill him.
Well, you saw the article that came out about Babylon Bee, but I mean, it was Babylon Bee, so it's satire, whatever, saying that Megyn Kelly got rid of her pager, and I was like, listen, you laugh about it, you joking about it, and we know Seth Dillon has come out strongly, pro Netanyahu stuff. He was in the Hiltons when that famous meeting was supposed to have taken place, but yeah. It's a lot of fighting. I kind of stay out. I look at the fact stuff. I don't care about people's mean posts on X. I mean, they're going after each other. I'm like, ugh, that's time to.
So then here you have this guy, Preston Alfonso Para. He's the CEO of former U.S. soldier, surrogate for Trump 24 campaign, and conservative influencer, and a Sephardic Jew. So that would be a religious Jew who
Mm-hmm.
believes in the Torah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's there with him. There he is with him in hiding, apparently in with Bukele in El Salvador of all places. These few Israeli paid influencers are insinuating that Elijah Schaefer is in any way wrong for coming to El Salvador or creating a legal fund amidst this ordeal between Cash Patel's girlfriend and they're out of their minds and obviously compromised. The administration has covered up an attempted assassination of a U.S. president, an actual assassination of a right-wing leader, that would be Charlie, and suppressed information about the Epstein files while lambasting patriots like Massey and MTG, who MTG now had to do a humiliation ritual on TV today on the Sunday shows, saying that she just wants to get along with everyone now. And propping up America First contrarians like Randy Fine, who is literally an Israel agent, and so is Byron Donalds.
Well, this is what gets me is I can't, and I've talked about this many times on the show for the last month. It's like the people that cannot see the resemblance of the right becoming exactly what they argued the left was doing to them 8 or 9 years ago. They're even using the same words like platforming or like what you're saying about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Feels like she has to go on an apology tour because she went on The View and just didn't start screaming at them. But she's trying to bring some kind of unity instead of hatred, which is actually a core Christian value. I think that's kind of what makes me mad is when people will say things about Muslims and act like they're just should be forgotten and destroyed or whatever. And I'm like, do you not believe in redemption? Do you not believe that they could come to Christ as a Christian? Because that's supposed to be our belief, right? The same thing about Judaism or Buddhism, whatever, any religion. Like the teachings of Christ is that they're all God's children, that we shouldn't give up on anyone. Now, if they try to harm you or whatever, then yeah, then you are in every right to protect yourself for sure. But like all those Muslims that were hanging off that C-70 when we were leaving Abigate at the end of our tour in Afghanistan, weren't hanging on that plane because they wanted to come get a job at McDonald's in America. They knew exactly what was going to happen the minute those last soldiers pulled out of that basically city they'd made in Afghanistan, where they protect the little girls and protect the little boys, and the women actually was able to start going to school. They knew exactly what was going to happen the minute they leave. That's why they were hanging on. It was to leave, to me, in my mind, in my opinion, was to leave the authoritarianism that Islam brought into their lives, because they were fortunate enough to live around a military base where they had Marines and Army, veterans protecting them. But yeah, that to me that's why I get kind of upset about when I hear people kind of do that. I'm like,
well, my MTG cynical point of view is that she wants to run for senator. Trump said no, and I know why Trump said no, and she knows why everyone's telling her no. That if you don't kiss up to get those donors' money, the Zionist donor money, the party will not back you. And remember, in a way, that's a way of saying neocons too. They're part of that whole bunch. And especially in a dark, horrible, corrupt, good old boys network like Georgia, if you don't go do your humiliation ritual over on CNN, you ain't going anywhere, and you'll be lucky if you're not primaried. I think Trump tried to tell her that. This is just my speculation, because look, it's the same thing with Langford. Langford, a so-called Baptist minister, had to go on his humiliation tour to the point where they had a pre-positioned camera during Biden's State of the Union speech, where they started talking about giving amnesty to the illegals, and that camera turned on and did a full face picture of my senator here in Red as Red, Oklahoma. He had to do the humiliation ritual because he had stood up for Arizona when before the J6 so-called pipe bomb ended the normal session of Congress to count the electors for the 2020 election. So that's what I see. I'm very cynical, sorry. But listen to this.
No, we talk. To be truly, again, this is kind of one of the things we touched on last night, and we kind of wanted to trying to not go too deep on, because I wanted to have the conversation today. Like, I don't disagree with you. I think our disagreement came with that when I said to you that that's what the part of it that needed to stop at whatever cost. I'd like to put somebody not being able to be bought and sold because of donation money. And does that mean that these people might not have any donors and lose? That's a risk you got to take in order to, quote, drain the swamp. And nobody said this was going to be easy. We all knew this was going to be difficult. You can't change a corrupt system that's so deeply embedded in your government that people are still there regardless of whatever president's there. It's going to hurt. And I think that's what the American people got to wrap their mind around. I mean,
I
it
don't
is going
see
to
how
hurt.
I don't see how MAGA can win an election without just completely divorcing themselves from this money in the I'm caveating in the system we have at this moment right now. Now, if certain people go to jail, that changes. If you
Hmm.
change the election finance laws, that
Yeah,
totally changes.
yeah.
Even if you change the voting machine situation and just sort of the mechanics of election, that changes it. And cleaning up the voter rolls, which, by the way, all of these things are being worked on. But as it is right now, if you don't have $1 trillion, you will not be president.
That's the problem, right?
Right.
And
It
I
is
guess that's what I said to
exactly
you
the
before.
problem. And
That's what I
that was
said to you
brought to you
before.
by
Well, that's
John No Name McCain.
well,
These election laws were written by John McCain.
that's why I said to you before, whenever we kind of got back and forth about, well, nobody's going to win. You know, you said to me, nobody's going to win, boy, nobody's going to win. And I was like, yeah, but again, this is there lies the problem. Either you can continue to go on with the system that you fought against and elected a bull in a china shop to stop, or you can just keep going along to get along and nothing's ever going to change. It's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to, you know, that's to me where I think Americans have to understand it's going to be painful. It's
Yes,
going to
it's
be
going to be
painful.
insane.
Yeah,
So
but we
getting
got to
back to
get away from
this,
that system. Yeah, go ahead.
Shepherdic Jew
Which are, by the
says,
way, Talmudic, which I don't like at all, by the way.
if I was Elijah, I wouldn't have stopped at El Salvador. I would probably be in some underground bunker in the
Oh,
Arctic. This is how scared these people are. They're
yeah, I get
freaking
it. I
hiding.
don't, do you blame them? If it
These
wasn't for
people
Tucker,
will
what would we know about crooks right now? Man, trying to kill our president. Nobody,
these
I mean,
people will stop at nothing to serve their masters. I wouldn't even be it wouldn't be so bad if their masters were establishment neocons of days past. But their masters are of a different bloodline and religion entirely.
oh, there you go.
Knowing this class can get away with cold-blooded murder and scandal on the international stage, you'd be silly not to relocate and regroup as they launch their lawfare against you in the States, which I'm sure will include planting evidence and any other ways that they can conjure up to destroy someone. My advice
Mhm.
is not to run from these people, but not to plan your counter in their conference room full of surveillance, aka the US in Elijah's case. This is a fight we have to take to Elijah's defense. Could be you tomorrow. Viva Cristo Rey. So this is where we're at in this country now. Why no one understands this? I I mean, going back to when Charlie was first killed, I don't know if I have this picture, but Trump put out a picture, and what did he put out a picture of? A picture of him with the
Yep, I
American
get,
flag and Charlie Kirk with the Israel flag. He's telling you right there what he thinks happened to Charlie Kirk.
oh, yeah.
And people think, oh, I'm so mad at Trump for doing that. We already know whether you believe in Q or not, we know that Trump signals. Like, he doesn't just put stuff out there, he signals. Sometimes he just puts stuff out there, but he often puts stuff out later. You look and you're like, oh, now I know why he did that. Right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I believe that was a signal. Now, um, so there's a lot of people that are hiding now in El Salvador.
Right?
Apparently, El Salvador's economic deal that Trump just signed with them, they're getting the chip for AI supercomputers. You
Mm.
know, that I think that's that Nvidia. Is that the name of the company, the chip company?
Nivea. Hmm.
Nvidia.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
think
good.
that's
Yeah,
that dude.
yeah.
And they're
It
giving
just,
him all this stuff, and all the people who are afraid they're going to be killed instantly are all going there, including George Papadopoulos. And you know why he's there with his wife? Because they know exactly what triggered Crossfire Hurricane, and they know it's
Mhm.
like Brennan and Comey and all those guys who that grand jury's on.
Yep.
And they're afraid to be in the United States.
Can't blame them.
You know, and Matt Gaetz is there. Now they're going after Matt Gaetz's welcome to El Salvador, Matt Gaetz. They're going after his producer, who used to be Steve Bannon's producer. and he was part of that chat group of all the young Republicans who all were in this chat being like 4chan type guys with the Jew jokes and all kinds of inappropriate
It is
jokes.
Call of Duty chat rooms from the
Yes.
2019s, just to set in context. And if you don't know what that means, it means imagine yourself on a Navy vessel with a bunch of sailors saying the most inappropriate jokes, but everybody's laughing kind of scenario.
But they're taking down the entire future of the MAGA. So they've taken down
They're
Gavin
trying.
Wax. Now they've taken down Rish Bara, who is Matt Gaetz's producer. And he's
What
at
are they
One
getting him
American
for?
News, which is very, very kind of Christian-y, maybe Zionist, I don't know.
What are they
Whether
accusing
Matt
him
Gaetz
of?
has a job when he gets back or not, I don't know.
So what are they accusing his producer of?
Because he was in that chat room. And he put a meme out that was like a Jew, not very good Jew thing.
Yeah. Well, this is what they do, right? They're trying to like publicly
right, here it is. And
assassinate
guess who's behind this? Matt Tierman. The guy who took down James O'Keefe. A guy I'm very worried about. And here he is, taking down one by one these kids that had this chat room, which really is none of his business to look at, from the New York Young Republicans Club. Here's Vish, who's worked for a lot of people. I don't really know if he's good or not, but man, they pass him around from show to show. He must be an awesome researcher. And he put nasty stuff out. He likes his weed and stuff like that. And he knocked him out. So that's why I believe Matt Gaetz. I'll guarantee you that when
See, this is what you're
Steve
talking about
Bannon
now.
saw Matt Tierman, he told him to get out of Dodge.
But
I'll guarantee you.
This is why, like I'm telling you, though, this is the part of the conversation I wanted to have with you. These are the parts the moving parts behind the scenes that a lot of people are paying attention to the Charlie Kirk and what happened that day, and we'll get into that. But these are the things that people need to pay attention to.
That's exactly right. The rest of it is all nonsense.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors.
And so, right, so he had a 1930s Hitler in Germany image. And here's Matthew Tierman. I'm going to crush all of these people who are calling vermin and cockroaches, when these people themselves are calling people like me vermin and cockroaches.
You know who these are? These are Nick Vujicic's fans. These are young guys that can make brash, harsh, degrading jokes. They were born in the stage of COVID, being locked in their rooms, playing video games, and those. And by the way, these chat rooms are full of all kinds of. They're full of black people that make cracker jokes,
right? And they're just
and
full
like
of
Mexicans
shit.
that make like black joke like that. Yes, they all bullshit about each other, but all of them are laughing. And then
so
you screen grab that, post it, and say, "Look at these racists."
Matt Gaetz has sex with teen, which Matt Gaetz himself said on Twitter. Someone said to Matt, "Were you trapped in a Mossad honeypot?" And Matt Gaetz answered that tweet, yes. And now they're saying this honeypot that was on the boat with the Jewish guy who was going to jail for taking money or whatever.
Maxwell?
No, his name was Greenberg or something, and he was a friend of Matt Gaetz's in Florida, and the guy got in financial trouble. And he invited Matt Gaetz on the boat with a girl who he said was of age, and she even had a fake ID, but that he made. But she was actually 17 years old. Well, now they've morphed. This is from yesterday, right? 2 days ago, the 14th, Friday. And that says that this girl was a homeless prostitute who was taking money to pay for braces on her teeth.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure
so
that's
this
what
is what they're writing up. And then you find out, okay, now they've done this. Then they take down his producer on his show. And so there goes Matt Gaetz, right?
Well, now there goes Matt Gaetz. If we let him go that there goes Matt Gaetz. That's
so now,
where people that hang on. Let me just get this out, Erin. This is where I think it's a funny little clip, and maybe I'll dig it up. But there's one scene out of like the Bug's Life or whatever, where the ants are sitting around They're all in their hill, and here comes the Hornets or Wasp, whatever they were. I don't remember what it was, but he was like, "Oh, we'll take them out." He's like, "Do you think they'll figure out there's more of them than us?" Like that's what Americans, again, just speaking for America, need to realize: the power is in the people. You don't get Budweiser to apologize because some government told them to. It was the power of the people that did that stuff. There's a lot of
I
power
mean,
in a collective.
my answer being
Just
Gen
gotta
X,
collect.
is,
So,
you know, she had an ID. If you want to bang chicks on a boat, I'll go for it. I mean, but for some reason, younger people think that's not the right response. But my response is, I don't care if people are banging people and stuff because it's a honeypot. If they obviously knew what it really was, he wouldn't have been banging the chick. I mean, that's just my response. I know it's inappropriate. But if people had my response, you wouldn't be able to blackmail these people.
no,
If
the
he
thing
didn't
that
know
I will
she
tell
was
you, the thing that
17, he
that
didn't
yes,
know.
that's the part that matters to me. If you're a person that cares enough to ask, and somebody goes to the effort of making a fake ID to fool you of what their age is, you can't then lay blame on the person that was fooled. You have to place the blame on the person that had an intention to fooling that person. She wasn't. If she was 12 or 14, at being 17, they knew what they were doing.
So here's one of his posts. I mean, it's not nice. You're not going to be able to run and hide for long, Susie Lebowitz Edelman. Your blood money can only buy so much loyalty. It's just typical
This is a private
guy
chat room.
crap that you see like on any like 4chan, 8chan, any of
Yeah,
them,
go watch
like
the Andrew
over and
Schultz
over.
comedy show.
Yes.
He talks about Indian people and Muslims. He went over to like Dubai or whatever and was talking about the Muslim factions. Like they were cracking up, but people in America are like, oh, clutching
Right.
their
I mean,
pearls.
these pearl grippers, I'm like, I just, it's like at some point I just say you're in the wrong party.
I'm just so glad we're getting away from them. That's why we can't let them. They're trying to bring back 2022 and 2023 talking points, and we can't let them drag us back into political correctness. I'm gonna lose my damn mind. Now I need 20-year-old boys to be making brash crash jokes in a private chat room. Okay, we still haven't lost our humor and our ability to rib one another without falling over crying. That's the freedom in the people that everybody knows you're joking. This person post that was not they're not a racist in life. It was something funny, and probably one of their people that influences them made a joke. Again, don't let them drag us back into men can have
Right. But
babies.
here's the thing. Matthew Tierman, and I don't know if he's the guy who got the chat, but he took down James O'Keefe in the exact same motion. You
Interesting,
get a
huh?
chat, you get your conversations, private love talk with your girlfriend, whatever it is, you publish it and you take them down. He did that over at Project Veritas, and now he's doing it here. And he's associated with the New York Young Republicans Club.
Weird. It's almost like this guy has help hacking into back rooms and releasing information. That's weird.
That's what, yeah, exactly.
Isn't that unusual?
Yeah, totally unusual.
What
And then
luck?
right, this is why this guy scares me. Like he always is at the scene of the takedown.
At the
Now he's taken
prom.
down like 20 young guys that were the future of MAGA for a
Yeah.
chat that was from a while back. That to him, maybe, because he's triggered, and I believe he's Polish. So another one of these
He would just
generational
be.
triggered people. And he seems to have some personal problem with young guys acting like little jerks in a chat. And, whatever. I mean, it's like, dude, you're my age, okay, Gen X. I could tell you stories, Gen X stories that make your hair fall out by today's standards. I
You
mean,
know what? This is going to
it's like,
happen, right?
where did these pearls come from,
No,
man?
you
What are
know
you
what's going to
talking
happen.
about?
What's going to happen is Nick Fuentes is going to wind up being president because this stuff is not going to go in the direction they think it is. There's going to
Nick
be such a
Fuentes.
pushback that dude is allowed to become president. These people don't stop doing this kind of crap, shaming people. They're making people more radical.
Right. Well, I agree with Tucker Carlson that I agree with things. The thing I don't agree with about, and I think so dangerous about Nick Fuentes, is that he got so angry. He was like, if you can't fight them, join them. And he became a bloodline person. And he puts things in context of like white people and black people and this and that.
Again, they're creating this just like they did when he
Yes,
was
they are
18.
creating this.
They're
But the
doing
point
it.
is, I don't agree with radicalizing young people to talk
I
and
don't either.
behave that way. And that's why I don't like Nick Fuentes, because they're the color of some, again, a very Gen X thing. We were taught
Oh,
to be colorblind. Like in my generation, like
you don't
we,
have Gen X too, right?
yes.
Okay.
So, like, we know that, like, Martin Luther King, we know some things, whatever. But just
Okay.
generally, we all had to take a chapter on Martin Luther King in school, and we believed that. We were brought up that way. I never cared about if somebody was black or whatever. It's still to this day, when I walk up and talk to somebody, it's like not even a part of my any instinct whatsoever about the conversation or anything. I talk to black people the same way I talk about any other group. You know what I mean? Like,
I
I'm
get what you're
just
saying, Erin, and I'm
like,
not
it's
even.
just not
I'm
a
not
part of
even.
my
I,
thing,
I'm
but
not.
it's
I'm. Hang on. I'm not even arguing with you about that. Why I'm saying they're creating these people is because you're thinking through the mind of a Gen Xer like we are. They're not thinking through these millennial minds. These people have been told these. Okay, look at the demographic: white, straight, young men have been listening for the last decade that they need to sit down and shut up. They have nothing to say. They're not part of the conversation. Be quiet with your opinions on whatever. Pick your topic. That's what they've listened to. And what you're getting is going to get is complete and utter rebellion in a bad kind of way. That's why I
yep,
said you're going to get a Nick Fuentes. Not that
that's
I
right.
agree with it or whatever. We don't have to see them. We
No.
weren't raised like them. They came up during COVID. They didn't get to go to graduations. They know people probably died in hospitals and told they couldn't visit them. But and on
And they
top
have
of
nowhere
that,
to hang out with chicks. People don't like bars or
well,
closed, roller skating's not a thing. Like
that's why I brought
even
up
like
corn in the beginning.
skateboard parks, everyone's sitting on their computer, which is like a bubble, and they're not copping fields or anything, having a girlfriend, nothing. And it's a lot of energy, a lot of testosterone out there. And I feel sorry for them.
Mhm. That's what I said
By
about
the
making
time
people
I
more
was the
radical.
age of some of these people, I had already had a steady boyfriend. I went
Yeah, good.
out dancing. I went to the roller skating rink. People were sneaking drinks and smoking and doing all the stuff you see in an 80s movie. And I'm sure your experience was the same.
Oh yeah, I was
And these
engaged at
kids,
17.
it's like they're watching a movie. They have no actual life. All they hear is from Gen X and other people saying, "Oh, I remember when." And then they watch 80s movies and they see like a thing. It's like in 2000 or maybe 2010, everything stopped. There's no new music, no new fashion. The movies are all remakes. There's nothing to be excited about. There's no life. There's nowhere to go. No bars. They don't even toilet paper houses on Halloween. I mean, they do nothing. They never break the rules. So of course
Oh, they
they're in
breaking the
chat rooms
rules.
acting like lunatics.
Oh, they're breaking the rules. They're just breaking a lot more dangerous ones. Instead of toilet paper somebody's houses, they're robbing a
Right.
store or trying to carjack somebody because they're seeing the laws not even being enforced, where people are sent to jail and then turn around and released. That's on the crime side of me. I could go off on a tangent, but let's get to what you're talking about now. Is I find super interesting. So please continue about the Matthew Tymond. I'm going to mess his last name up.
Tiermand.
Yeah, the Polish American
Right.
economist
And
who thinks he
he's
knows
just
everything.
one guy. And the only reason I even know about Matthew Tierman is I've crossed paths with him because he's involved in a lot of these non-for-profits and stuff. I never had a problem with him. I guess until the James O'Keefe thing started, I never really thought anything of all of these people. But then the James O'Keefe thing was the first time I saw, like I said, everyone knows you have conflict. Everyone knows you have to jump two when donors call and it's a two-way street, and sometimes people get really mad. I mean, which Charlie told the story, but the Matthew Tierman thing being at Project Veritas is the first time I saw them. Somebody foment a board, literally stealing your organization from you. And that was an example that I'm sure Charlie paid real close attention to. And again, James O'Keefe and Charlie Kirk were very good friends.
Yeah, it says here he was Open the Books, Deputy Director, ongoing,
Yeah.
joined 2018, Project Veritas, board
Yep.
member until July
And
2023, Club for Growth Foundation. He's a fellow of that institute, appointed in 2021, and the Claremont Institute. He's a Lincoln Fellow, ongoing from 2020. Sorry, just want to
right.
add
And
that.
he
You're
was a
looking at where you're talking.
character who's from Chicago. He went to the
Mhm.
University of Chicago, so I think he's a New Yorker, but he has very close ties to Chicago and was always very involved in Chicago politics. So my paths crossed with him, in some ways very close. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to pay attention to people I know when they seem to be in the middle of bad stuff going on. I don't know what James O'Keefe did. And maybe he took a lot of money or what. I don't even know. No one can really get to the bottom of it. All I know is that it's in court now, and James O'Keefe has taken depositions from Matthew Tierman. The other guy who did this was that Kyle Seraphin is the other guy who took down Project Veritas. He's the one who took the hacked her, however, got the girlfriend talk off of the personal phone of James O'Keefe and put it out there. That was Kyle Seraphin. And both of them, so this ongoing court case is happening, and the judge is working out giving Project Veritas back to James O'Keefe. So that doesn't really sound good for Seraphin or Tierman if the judge is already working out how to give Project Veritas back to James O'Keefe. So I don't know why that
Do you
is,
think that?
but it
Well, I'll
just
tell you
seems
why. Because
like
Project Veritas is going to end up like TPUSA if they don't figure stuff out real quick. James O'Keefe was Project Veritas, just like Charlie Kirk is TPUSA. You can dance it up, you can polish, but my grandmother said you can't really polish a turd. And Charlie Kirk is so rare, and it's that's why again I've talked to you about this privately. I'll say again, and I never even met him like you had, but after Charlie's death, I cried for days. And again, Salty's the one that had said this to me, and it just rang so true. Is that it was you just didn't lose a very talented commentator. Like as a Christian, you lost, you feel like you lost somebody in the fight for Christ that was a genuine Christian and how he conducted himself. There's so many people with that say they're a believer in Christ, they're a Christian, whatever, and then you see them doing some things, you're like, how's that possible? But Charlie lived it. Like in the way he spoke to people that he vehemently disagreed with, he was still tried to be kind to him. Now Charlie could be bitey, but he only usually got that way if somebody was that way towards him. Like he did as a reaction thing, not as a he didn't lead
right.
with
I
that
mean,
correct.
if Charlie was, I want to say Catholic, but I'm not going to say Catholic. If Charlie
No,
was
he was.
Orthodox,
Yeah, but he was a Christian. And that's where the Calvary Church comes in because he was evangelical, but he had been dabbling in Catholicism at the end of his life. That's another thing they attacked Candace on until she showed him the proof, like that like that he was doing things, going to mass. He loved the traditions of the Catholic Church. He brought up even on one of his podcasts talking about they didn't. He felt like evangelicals didn't give Mary her dues. And where's that come from? Catholicism, where they,
right? I
really.
have, I don't know, but what I was going to make is a point that, like, I just happen to know that in the Orthodox religion, um, it's sort of more common to have local saints. And I would
Well,
say that if Charlie Kirk was Orthodox, he would definitely be given, go through the process and become a church leader or church saint, where his church would venerate him and he would have a tomb and all that. I'm just saying that that's the level of, I believe, respect that the whatever church he belonged to should be giving him. But I understand that evangelicals don't go there with that kind of veneration. I get it.
Yeah,
But
he
I'm
was.
just saying if
I
I
just want to
wish
be
he was a
clear.
Catholic or Orthodox, because I think he deserves something.
Well, I just want to be clear. He was an evangelical Christian when he died, but he had been looking into Catholicism very, very heavily the last, at least that my research conducted, is the last probably year of his life. That's why, if Candace also converted into Catholicism from Christianity, right? And so can't say, of course, we can't see the future, but you can't say Charlie didn't have a love, an affinity for Catholicism when he died. So he could have been on a journey towards it for sure, but he died as an evangelical. But all you got to do is go
So,
listen to what he said the last year of his life to, but he was also in Judaism too, as far as that goes. He practiced the Sabbath. He was writing a book on it. He observed the Shabbat, so.
right. So just to finish this arc, and I'm only using this Elijah Schaefer because
Oh, yeah.
it's who I ran across.
I love
But
it.
there's a lot of people that are being targeted by this apocalypse, this Zionist
Troll farm.
blitzkrieg that's going on. And so he says, it's America first or leave. What that's telling me is that he understands that if the neocons, which is sort of this big overlay with Zionists, if they're going to be making people literally have to leave the country or do like Marjorie Taylor Greene is under attack. She's got the pizzas coming, the death threats, all of that. I think she went on TV today to just basically stay alive. She has children. They
Yeah.
tried to bomb her business today.
Oh, did they?
She should really go to El Salvador.
They tried to bomb her business?
Yes,
Oh my God.
the
Yeah, I did not know
construction
that.
business. People can't survive this. This is a blitzkrieg. I don't know how else to describe it. This is
You know,
serious.
what's crazy is that people, you could look at what our future could be. Now, again, it's going to take a lot more. We're a huge country with a huge economy versus El Salvador, okay? But that is an example. If you want to take a test case or use a tinier example to prove what can be
Yes.
done, you can use Bucali to show that. We got people fleeing to El Salvador for
Yes.
safety when it was the murder
Yeah.
capital of the world.
That's why
That's what one president did for a country. So again, it's going
Yes.
to be painful here in America.
Right.
And a lot of people gave him a lot of flack for how he handled stuff. But what did he do? What's the one thing Bucali did? He got his hand on crime. He
Right.
built that
And
massive prison and threw everybody in
if
it.
we purge these people, which I believe Trump thinks had something to do with Charlie being killed, and I think Trump is struggling because he needs $1 trillion for JD Vance to win. And if JD Vance doesn't win, we're all going to have to leave the country. They already have said straight up the first day we are going to pack the Supreme Court. Day 2, we're going to make why can't I think of it? Puerto Rico, the 51st state. That's 2 more senators. We will never ever control the Senate again. And then they're going to roll all the judges. And this country is going to be like Brazil with that, remember that Voldemort judge who put Bolsonaro in jail, and anyone that talks at all in jail. That's their plan. When you look at Brazil, that is their plan, and there will be nothing we can do about it.
I got now. Pump the brakes though. Here, I heard what you said a couple times. What I'm going to ask you is this, because I hear this a lot. So, what are you saying when you make that comment? That you believe that moving forward, if they do exactly what you said, which is pack Supreme Court and claim the Puerto Rico as a 51st state, that Democrats won't change their mind and vote for a Republican? Or are you saying that they'll have the voter fraud so wrapped up with illegals or whatever, that's what they'll use? Because I'm confused on that, because how it is portrayed to me, you don't think that if Democrats screw up the country enough that the mass of the population would do like they did for Trump and vote for a Republican the next
No,
day.
they will not. They
Well,
will
I bet
not
you say that.
change. No. Because
we watched it happen during
the
Trump.
Democrats who were just average American, maybe, their parents and grandparents were Democrats or they were Union or whatever, have all moved over to the Republicans or the independent category kind of over the last 10, 15 years, and I don't think that. So the Democrat Party now is really the DSA, the Socialist Party, the Democrat Socialists of America, and the Islamic Party. And so as that party gains in strength and they flood in the immigrants, give them all amnesty, it's going to become this red-green axis party of Islamic extremists and Marxist types, socialist types, the hardcore of the hardest core, and they will have the numbers of people who just want to freeload, radicalized blacks, radicalized youth, all the Islamic people they'll flood in here from all over the world, all the Hispanics who believe we stole their land and all that kind of crazy radicalization there. All the Native Americans who are radicalized. I think that the coalition with the baby boomers dying and everything, I think they would outnumber us. So no, I believe it's that dire. I really do. So there are probably parliamentary moves that governors can do in states. But as you can see, one by one by one, they're taking our states.
No, I know. I get what you're saying. I've heard you again. Don't have to repeat yourself. My challenge to you is, though, I guess, is what I don't see because I'm not as doomsday preppery as that.
I'm
I
just being
believe that I watched.
real.
Let me just finish. Let me just finish, Erin. What I'm saying is that I watched a lot of people change their mind for Donald Trump. So even if they get 2 more Senate seats or pack the Supreme Court with more even liberal judges, that of course is a massive concern. No argument there. But I don't believe that just because you say that you're a Democrat today, that means you're going to be a Democrat for 12 years. Because I changed my mindset myself. I guess I'm saying it because I've done it. I'm watching all these young kids because you don't pay attention to culture. I'm watching all these massive channels with millions of views talking to young children that who's the most popular are all conservative. More
they're not
leaning.
conservative, and I don't buy it. I mean, I'm not saying that people aren't changing, but people like the younger generations, they want theirs and they want it now, and Trump's not delivering. And I can show you page after page after page after page of polling data, focus group data, where they may say they're conservative, but to them, conservative has this strange racial nativist tone. And it's not about the whole thing with giving someone a fish or teaching someone to fish. These people want to be given a fish.
Yeah, but
And
I don't.
so,
If we've not learned anything over the last 8 years, like when people bring up polls to me, I'm like, okay, look at the bottom. Show me the fine print where it says 1,200 people were polled over whatever. And you're like, but this is what this is what the country thinks. I'm like, really? So 1,200 people speak for all 345 million of us? Like that's what polls to me. You look
well,
at the fine print of them. That's kind of what matters to me.
I was a
Because,
pollster for 12 years.
yep, I
And
know.
so, and I also, for a short time, did focus groups. And yes, you have to kind of average them all together. But even if you consider someone to be conservative because they became Christian, how many Christians are out there throwing themselves in front of ice trucks, shooting at the ice and running around with whistles, Christian as can be, saving the migrants? So that's kind of not an indicator either. You have to go deeper with focus groups, and there are people doing the focus groups. They are.
I'm not arguing with you that people aren't doing focus groups. Again, I think what it's good to keep in mind is the focus groups, how many people actually took the poll questionnaire and answered it, and then that's where they derived those numbers from. Was it less than 1,500 people?
No,
And
these
so
are
that
focus groups.
I get,
They're
I know
not
what you're.
polls, and there's no questions you ask. There's no questions you answer. A
I'm
focus,
trying to intertwine the two, right? So if I
yeah.
know what focus group I'm saying though is like the polling. I'm just careful when I because I think a lot of that stuff also gears like that gears conversations into more negative frame of mind when we had all these pollsters saying that there was no chance Trump was going to win the presidency, and he did it. I mean, by leaps and bounds. We also watched that, like again, the framing everyone as this idealistic bubble that can never change their mind. I just am never going to be able to do that because I'm living proof that that's just not the case. And I think I watched so many debates between, since we're talking about religion, between like Christians and Muslims or even Jewish people that convert their religion all the time. That you'll have Muslims becoming Christians, and so when people like say all Muslims are Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas or whatever, I I don't buy into it. I'm always willing to know that people can change, just like a Democrat can change into a Republican. So again, I'm not saying it shouldn't be alarming, and I'm worried to death. I don't want no Democrat winning because I have no doubt our freedom of speech is short-lived. But under Trump, they're arresting people for posting memes. I told you that yesterday. You're in Tennessee. They arrested some guy for a meme he posted on Facebook. Like, so it's happening under Trump.
If they legalize all of the illegal aliens in Tennessee, including the massive amount of, I don't know if they're still there, but you used to have massive camps of Islamic people training.
Oh yeah, like 6 or 7 of them, I think it was here at
Yes.
one time. Yep, I know
If
exactly what you're talking
they
about.
on day one legalize those people, change voting, they're gonna go down to the age 16. If they do these things, I mean, the wheels come off. I don't know what else to say.
I get you
Texas,
believe that. I'm just saying this. That's how
like
I disagree. We
80
don't got to
new
keep talking about it
mosques
though.
open, 60, 80 mosques open in Texas just this year.
Oh, I
There are
get
more
it.
mosques in Texas than almost anywhere else.
Yeah, again,
They have
man.
huge crowds of people praying and all that in Houston. They've completely taken over Houston. And that's
I
not
get,
even to mention that epic thing that they're building.
no, again,
And if
don't
Texas
hold,
goes,
Aaron, hold on. Let me just get a word in. I'm not trying to conflate the two things though, right? I'm not saying that there's not a reason to be concerned. I think a lot of people know my feelings on Sharia law, and again, my friends that spent time over in the military fighting the 20-year war, but like or whatever you want to call it. But that's all I mean is that I don't get bogged down into like the dogmatic thinking of people are always going to feel the way that they do. I'm not making an argument about we've got to, after we had an open border, we had all people from all kinds of countries that have no intention of integrating us to American society, which is number one problem of this country when you're looking at geopolitically or trying to keep a sovereignty of our own country instead of importing the world. You're not going to get an argument from me here. I'm a Christian. I believe that we should be a more majority Christian nation because I don't think people can argue against the Ten Commandments. That doesn't mean I think religion should be shoved down everybody's throats. I don't have an issue with the tenets of Christianity. Your individualism stuff. I have a big issue with Sharia law and Islamic stuff. I don't, trust me. I'm not arguing there, right? So I just want to make
right.
that real clear.
I just don't think about it in religious context. To me, it's voting blocks, and they're hardcore voting blocks that you're not going to change.
Well, Muslims are a lot more conservative than even we are.
It doesn't matter. That's not how they vote.
You don't think Muslims vote more conservative if they're citizens?
No, the
You
only
think they
reason
want
they voted for
LGBT in
Trump is
school?
because the only reason they voted for Trump in Michigan is because Trump said he wasn't going to bomb Iran.
Well,
They'll tell you that.
I get it. I think that a lot of the LGBTQ stuff had a lot to do with the Islamic vote as well. Just
Okay,
FYI.
well,
Oh, they
anyway,
got a real issue
so
with that community.
so so last thing I wanted to say was, so there's all this talk about the finances, that maybe Charlie was killed or something about the financing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my comment, and this is based on things that Charlie said. So I play his radio show, or I used to, in the background while I'm working at home. And so it's on every day. and I'd just kind of be semi listening to it. So this is October 9th, 2024. Charlie Kirk got thrown into this ballot chasing game in Arizona, which he was really angry that he set up his organization to save Arizona and Kerry Lake lost and all those other people lost, and that election is very sketchy and questionable. And
Yeah.
he became like dead set that wasn't going to happen again. So he started Turning Point Action, the ballot chasing initiative. And this is from the AP at that time, saying that Charlie Kirk is not allowed to chase ballots because when his radical people knock on people's doors, it'll be a turn off for them. This is what this article basically says.
The AP.
Well, no, what this is, it's not about the AP, actually. I mean, it is, but.
I mean, I'm just saying it's the AP releasing this article.
Right. They interviewed consultants who make all of their money running commercials in Arizona. When the consultants on a campaign run a commercial, they get a cut of every commercial that runs. That's how it works. And that's why Republicans run commercials on antenna TV, which I don't even, how many people watch antenna TV? Like 10? And
Right.
flow millions and billions and trillions of dollars on ads, because that's basically a campaign is just ad placement. And I believe they get 10% of every ad that runs.
Wow. Good way
And
to launder
so
some
when they
money.
find out that Charlie Kirk's coming in with like paid people in offices with a staff and a bunch of volunteers to chase ballots and do stuff that they charge a lot of money for, they were not happy. I mean, look at this write-up about how inexperienced and horrible an idea it is for Turning Point to edge in on their scam, if you want to call it a scam. And that's what this whole thing is, quotes from like insiders saying that Charlie Kirk had no business doing this. And so going back to things Charlie Kirk was saying in this era, he basically said he flew around, if I remember right, he flew around like a madman, hitting people, donors up for money. And that basically, like with it, I don't know if he talked to Trump or Don Jr. or some group of people where they were like, okay, somebody has to do this work. We all know, anyone involved with the GOP knows they don't do any work. They do golf outings. That's it. They don't do anything. So somebody had to do it. So we had Scott, whatever his name is. We got, whatever his deal is over there, Scott Pressler and Charlie Kirk. Yeah. So Charlie Kirk put his longest term guy, who was involved in Arizona politics, which, by the way, has been thrown out of the GOP. And they're the ones who's saying he's a child molester, Tyler Boyer. Through him, they got rid of him. Now that Charlie's dead, the GOP does not want Turning Point there because he edged in on their freaking money and their donors. This is how terrible all of these people are. They're really horrible people. And so when you talk about the finances, he moved money out of Turning Point and brought in a bunch of money. And so you can't be Turning Point and do ballot chasing because the nonprofit formation of the corporation that is Turning Point and the Turning Point Endowment, you have to have a certain type of nonprofit it's basically for advocating for an issue. And really, quite frankly, everybody like Heritage has Heritage Action. FreedomWorks used to have Freedom Work Action. You have to separate out your political operation from the other side. And then you have to move the money around. Not that anybody wants to do it that way. It's because of a series of court cases, I think one of them being that Citizens United. and the way that the whole non-for-profit works. So that's why, like, on the left, you really see it. Like, they have issue advocacy groups that run around and ballot chase or whatever, and then they have think tanks that aren't allowed to do any of that. So that's basically Charlie had these entities, not because he's hiding money and like I've seen people say, oh, he has ghost employees and all this stuff. Maybe someone was stealing the money with ghost employees, or maybe he just moved them over to Turning Point Action. And I remember him saying on his radio show that at some point he was like, I've been in a campaign for a super PAC. I work for a super PAC, which was the Freedom Works super PAC. We had no idea where the money was. We had no idea where the money was going. Like, I would be on my cell phone and they would call and say, we're dropping 5,000 yard signs. Do you have an address? And I would like madly be calling around and be like, hey, can we put 5,000 signs in your backyard for like 1 week and all the volunteers will come and get them? I mean, this is how, like, you have no idea. I'm buying lunch for people. I had like just an envelope full of receipts and I'm running around. I have cases of water in the back of my car with the trunk open. People are chasing me like dogs to get water so they can knock on doors. I mean, I had everything. I had ice packs. I had spare shoes for people whose feet hurt. I mean, and I'm buying all of this money, buying all of it because it was go time and the election was in a month. And so, am I surprised that a guy who started up a ballot chasing initiative where they had to create an app, put the data in the app, have all these volunteers who you have to feed and give money to and this and that and all this stuff, and you never did it before, and just go from like 0 to 100 in a matter of weeks? Am I surprised that they haven't turned in their tax stuff from last year, which would have been an election year? No, I'm not surprised. I'm not like making excuses for anyone. I'm just saying because I've been in a, super PAC type situation like that, I know how chaotic it is. It's very different than when he just had the, think tank where everything's like everyone comes, they sit at their desk, they do their radio hits. It's a very not chaotic thing in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea if someone stole money. Now, I don't trust this faith people. First of all, like, why did he create that faith entity? That's my financial question. Why do you have to have a separate pile of money for the faith thing? Like, what was that money being used for? Did they have to buy time at churches to speak at churches? Or like, why do you need money to do a faith thing? Why would you even have to separate out a faith thing? Some accountant or some lawyer advised them to do that. First of all. Second of all,
Yeah,
like,
I think that that's what going to get into the finances part of it. And I was telling you about the auditor and my issues with the faith-based sides of TPUSA, and that's why I told you I'm reserving my opinion on Tyler Boyer, is because him and Charlie both, and there's good reasons for it, by the way. But it does look
well,
a
he
little
was the
strange. But
action.
they are, hang on, let me just get it out of here. But they were paying themselves on, like Tyler Boyer paid himself from in 2022 because they stopped dropping him in 2023 for some other reason. Again, this is all framing around why I think uh, Charlie sent out that memo 8 days before he died about creating a Doge inside of Turning Point. But anyway, so 2022, Tyler Boyer paid himself $240,000 by America's Turning Point. He's paid himself the exact same amount, $240,296 by Turning Point Action, and he also paid himself $240,296 from TPUSA. So like he paid himself $240,000 that year from each of those entities. Now Charlie was doing the same thing, by the way. And
Hmm.
so, like, a lot of people like to say, yeah, but in their filings, they file that they have 0 employees. Like, what exactly could they have been doing for these, factions of TPUSA? This is weird. And I thought, well, that is interesting, right? But maybe
Yeah.
there's reasons for it. Maybe it's because they knew all these entities had their name on it. So instead of Charlie just paying himself, say, $1 million a year, he would just take out $250,000 from each entity to show that, he was, that he was basically the primary employee. He's the one that owned DPUSA and all these different, limbs of the organization. That's why he would paid himself that way. But
Right.
that
I
Ty Royer was in there right there with him, girl. They're the only 2 employees I could find that was doing that. That egregious of it was Charlie and Tyler.
right. I don't know how, like, I don't know anything about the accounting of how you move from one to the other, how you would want to report that. And
Have
I'm
to.
just saying that I watched, oh, there's some guy who's got a YouTube channel who thinks he's like some kind of forensic accountant, and he probably is. Something about
Mm-hmm.
lions or wolves or something. And I
Mm-hmm.
watched his presentation and I was like, okay, he brings up really good points, but I could tell that he never worked in a political think tank. I could tell that. So that remains to be seen, like, in my opinion. And then I guess the last thing I'm going to say is that I think, I know you and I agree with this. If that Tyler Robinson kid was even there, or him and the furry boyfriend or whatever, which I'm not 100% convinced because those camera shots, you really can't see anything. Although the body frame with the really squared shoulders does look like him. Um, I don't know. I guess we have to wait for the court case to see if bullet fragments that they pull out of Charlie match that gun. Matching the gun to his DNA is nothing. I mean, you could match a Coke can to me at I could be at a hot dog stand and someone gets shot and they find a Coke can and my DNA's on it. That doesn't mean I shot them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so we just kind of have to wait on that. But what I will say is that, again, man, who's running these psychological operations, these MK Ultra operations? Why was it Tyler's furry boyfriend, his mother, is very tied into the mental health system in Utah. Charlie Kirk, and that just reminds you of Crooks. Both their parents were tied into mental health care. There's so many similarities there. Both of them were on a roof. It was a roof that was not being watched by the speaker's security, basically. And there's so many similarities. It's like they're playing a playbook. And so, I mean, if you believe in, like, when you read the book Chaos and that people target people who are mentally unstable, who have issues or have a chip on their shoulder and are angry, and you put ideas in your head, like the Whitmer case, as we know from our friend Radix, like, what was it? 20 of out of the 20, 16 of them were feds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if Tyler Robinson took the shot. I don't know if he hit him. I mean, his gun was hidden in the woods. That's kind of all we really know, right? And his DNA was on the gun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I really can't waste my time, like, talking about something that I have no way of investigating or knowing.
Well, let me take real quick because we're right, and I'll show you what I mean by like how I've researched the topic just for a second, because you're exactly right. Like there's been a lot of narratives that have been tossed out in reference to Charlie's assassination, and the reason why people did that is because there was so many weird things that happened around it. The Zimmerman stumping up and shouting, I did it, shoot me, shoot me." The guy that stood up later and it was exposed that he was not a Charlie Kirk fan. He turned around to the crowd, was like cheering literally right after it happened. And so there was a lot of weird things that went on around it, right? And I dug in to try to dig into a lot of it. But I just want to say this, like I'm always willing to change my mind or be exposed to evidence that will make me change my mind or kind of dial into a certain, let's see, certain group of facts, right? So this is the one dude. If you're looking for anything about the gun, this this guy right here to me is broke down the best thing about the gun, the Paramount Tactical. This is like from 2 days ago, and I used this one because this guy had come on to challenge him with what most the conspiracies around the gun, think about it. It's a 30-06. How could it do this? Blah 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 to the neck and the muscles, and that doesn't make any sense. And this dude right here knows what he's talking about. Like he's in the military, 20 years. He's taught ballistics. Like he knows firearms and weaponry, and just how he said it is he's would be somebody you'd listen to, not some Twitter account, right? I'm gonna play a second of this, like what he says.
There's no way. I am at the point where I can say without a shadow of doubt, there is a 0% chance it was a 30-06.
See his grin on his face, like he's just heard it so many times. But the argument is what?
I mean, I disagree with that, but all right. There you go.
So Gary, this is like and I'm just going to be honest, like I have done a lot of talking with people online, and I'm going to guess that you know your way around using a weapon. You're the only person with military background that knows weapons well. You're the only person, and I'm not being facetious here.
I agree with it. I think it's crazy.
You are the only guy that I have found that served our country, that knows weapons, and that believes that a 30-06 did that.
And this is how I believe him. Even though he agreed, he's probably the only person that thinks it could happen.
Qualify that just a little bit. So,
okay.
First of all, most guys in the military and even snipers, quite frankly, don't know that much about ballistics. When I got out of the military, even when I was in the military, so first of all, I was an 18 Bravo. That's a weapons sergeant inside U.S. Army Special Forces. Now, I will say I've talked to a lot of military and weapons guys that believe like I do. They're just not on the internet. All right. I mean, I think really at the end of the day, yeah, there seems to be this, vet bro thing going on, but the vast majority of people that come from my line of work really aren't social media guys. And I wasn't either. I kind of got dragged into this and wasn't really, anyways. So besides, I was always a weapons nerd on top of being an 18 Bravo. And then when I got out of the military, I ended up working in a couple different positions. But then I started this company where I do a lot of ballistic testing, even before YouTube.
Okay, so I tried to get him. I wish I would have got a little bit closer to when he described it. He's going to do it more. His like
his name niche company. I get companies, firearms companies and ammunition companies have sent me ammo to test and things like that. So I will say, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Now this is what is a fact. And I don't care what anybody else says on the internet. To come to a predicted outcome with ballistics, there's some basic facts that you have to know. It's just in the way, if I saw a car, if I looked at a car and I said that car can or can't do 200 miles an hour, but I'm just looking at it from the outside, that's a pretty stupid statement to me. I have no idea what engine it's in it. I have no idea what transmission's in it. But there are some basic facts that you have to know before you can come to any sort of ballistic conclusion or prediction. And that is, number one, what type of ammo is used? Is that store-bought ammunition or is that box ammunition or hand-loaded ammunition? I need to know what the projectile type is. Is that FMJ? Is that frangible? Whatever else we got going on. I need to know the bullet weight. Right? We need to know the grain weight of that ammunition. Was it 100 grain round? Was it 175, 180, or whatever else? I need to know ultimately the muzzle velocity. We don't know what that is. And then I also need to know what condition that ammo is. I've definitely seen old ammo do lots of weird things. And there's many military folks out there. If you shot nearly as much ammunition as I did in the military, You've come across things like squibs. You've come across things like hang fire. So a squib is a round that you shoot that doesn't exit the barrel. That
So
happens.
he goes on to talk about it more. Like my whole point is, this is what I mean. I listened to a lot of conversations around that gun, but I finally listened to somebody go into detail about. And again, I have a firearm next to me. Like I know how to shoot a weapon, but I don't know ballistics. But armchair experts is what we run into because of social media. But to me, he has the qualifications, and he didn't even need to. He brought up very logical explanations to say we don't know. There's a lot of things you need to know about the bullet itself before you start going and saying it couldn't have been an exit or an entrance wound and stuff like that. But that's this dude. So like I suggest, or thinking about anything about the gun, that's why I'll wait for the court case. That's the important thing to me. And this is the only other thing I'll say. This is where something about the church, the people that Charlie got himself involved in with that to PP faith, some of the people around that don't seem like the most genuine people. I really have an issue with those people. Like some of them, like the thing that Rob McCoy said about his son bothers me because he's a pastor. That to me means that he should be honest. And the things he said about what his son Mikey experienced that day was complete lie. And I don't know why you would do that because he said it literally standing at the podium at church. And you're just like, oh, that doesn't make any sense to me. The guy that took down the film, the SD card, he literally ran behind that wall and like took a selfie video of himself. And then, but was confident enough to turn the camera around to get it at the exact moment they were carrying Charlie's body to the car and then flip the camera back around to get on himself and in that moment proclaim that they had killed Charlie. This is before he was in the car. That's curious to me. Those are the things that make me feel like this was planned or somebody knew or what. How which could you do that, Erin? I've not been your right hand person for a year and a half or 2 years or whatever. Been around the world with you and traveling. I've never even met you in person. Our relationship has been solely online. But I can guarantee you, if like something like that happened to you, the last thing I'm thinking about is making sure I get my smartphone out, record myself, and give commentary and show your dead body being loaded in the car. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. Going back to the gun thing just for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm just a future proofs past kind of person, okay?
Yeah, go
So,
for it.
so anyone who's a JFK investigator understands that in the very beginning, they call them the first generation investigators. The first generation investigators went around and interviewed people, and you've probably seen the films where they talked to the people that lived where the police officer Tippett got shot and talked to police officers who were in the motorcade and all of that and got that on they were hauling gigantic film cameras in to get this footage.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had this second generation, I'm going to say was like the 80s and 90s, where the feds brought in all the ballistic experts and they blew like 20 years with this kind of like angles and bullets and forensics. They brought in like fake people with mercury bullets, people who say the driver turned around and shot through the seat and shot him in, the driver of the car shot him and then sped off, and all this stuff about ballistics. Well, people now, I'm going to say almost every single person, give or take a few, who are we'll call third generation, understand and know that the feds made them look for the shooter, but the shooter's really not the story. The story is, why was the shooter there? What motivated that person to get there and actually kill Kennedy? Was it Israel? Was it this? Was it that? And the feds can throw every kind of ballistic expert out there, You know, they're on PBS specials, they're on ABC specials, they're up on a tower, they got this gun, they got that gun, they got this scope, that scope. They were burning time because all the witnesses were dying because it was 30 years later. And you'll notice they bring this stuff out before the anniversaries, or if someone has a book that's actually kind of hot and hitting on something, like something you should focus on, like Ruth Payne, then they will bring out the ballistic thing again. So I'm very, all I know is when you see that one slowed down video that does not seem to be altered, but is very slowed down. I hate to say this because I knew Charlie, but his whole body, the amount of kinetic energy, that bullet blew his head up twice the size. I mean, his neck bulged. I mean, I can only imagine what internal damage was. I mean, you see big bulges come out of his back. I mean, that the kinetic energy that was expended through his soft tissue and bones and everything, you can just see it. And I don't know anything else except that it was, in my opinion, a bullet that's much bigger than a handgun, because you don't see that like with handgun stuff, but I may be smaller than this 10, whatever they say, 10-08. I don't even know what that is. I just think it's a strange choice of a weapon. And here's the thing that really actually also is, like, to me, a calling card. The weapon that Oswald used was also a war keepsake, a relic. And this kid supposedly had, was it World War II or World War I relic gun? And I think that's a calling card, to be honest with you, because no one on earth would have that kind of weapon and use it. So that's my comment on the gun stuff. And that's because I really just don't know anything about guns, but I see the play. I see the pattern. I see the play, the roof, the relic gun, all these little things. The people, like you have an umbrella man, just like with JFK with the umbrella guy signaling, and he's clearly signaling. And then you have the two other guys that look Cuban, clearly have radios under their shirts, signaling, clearly in multiple films and multiple photographs, just like in this. You have the Destiny guy there asking the question. You got the guy who said, I did it, the crisis actor type character that seems to be at a lot of places where really bad things happen. You have the other guy cheering. It's a play. It's a play. I really honestly think some government or intelligence entity ran a play just because of all the other stuff. I don't have to talk about the bullets at all. It's everything around it. The fact that the doors were not locked and they let people up on the balcony at all is a play. Nobody. I mean, I worked in theaters. I would never, ever, ever let talent out on a stage when it's going to be like like a comedian where it might get, a little crazy where people get mad. You would never open the balconies unless you're an idiot. And if you open the balconies, not have someone that's monitoring who's going in and out of the balconies at the door.
Well, that's funny you say that. Let me share this really quick because it was something else that's important that's coming out. Like, I couldn't find the longer version of this. Actually, somebody went on the Patreon and watched and took clips from it to show what happened inside the conversation. But this is going on. You can only get it on Sean Ryan's, like, the Patreon now, about these interviewing the head of the security team that was there that day. And it all started, and I think I showed you this with this leak of this text from Chief Long, where he says, this is from Charlie Kirk's security. It says, this was a message exchanged between Charlie Kirk's head of security and the UVU chief of police regarding the rooftop. Join me live tonight and all that. Right. This is from his chief of security. Hello, Chief Long. We received this message today from the student group FYSA. there is student roof access pretty close to where CK, meaning Charlie Kirk, will be set up at the Utah Valley, the Serene Student Center, as a couple staircases that go up to the walkways on the roof. And this Chief Long says, "You want access to the roof?" And Charlie Kirk's security team comes back and says, "I was told students have access above us. If this is true, it would be nice to either have it controlled access or allow one of my guys to be there as well if possible." And then Chief Long says, "I got you covered." And then he says, "Thank you, sir." So so Sean Ryan comes out with this.
Kirk is the head of his contracted security detail on September 10th when he was assassinated. You know I'm not a combative interviewer. I do have some tough questions. It's been 2 months since this tragedy, and there are a lot of unanswered questions. People are starving for some answers. I know a lot of people are going to be very interested in what you have to say.
There's so much out there, and there's so much out there that's not true.
You cannot say everyone in the pro Israel, and I don't say acts that way. But I got text about you, Megan.
You know, I've been really quiet about this. It's a real shame, but it just got to be so much that I just did not trust my own eyes, ears, what I was reading, what I was watching. I think a lot of people have sensationalized this.
Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder.
Just grainy surveillance footage, fake text messages, and a transgender furry.
In less than 36 hours, 33 to be precise, thanks to the full weight of the federal government and leading out with the partners here in the state of Utah and Governor Cox, the suspect was
to put that
skip that. It showed that
kind of effort out. The team gets together, and then they authorize him to get the tattoo, and then they get to get a tattoo, and that, you know, brothers in Christ for eternity.
People need to understand that they do not have jurisdiction on the rooftops or the surrounding area.
That's the thing that I don't know why he said that. He's talking about jurisdictions for them to have access on the rooftops. Like, that's just all they had to do is what you just saw in those messages was reached out to the chief and said, "Hey, can we get access?" He says, "Yeah, I got you covered." So see, this is where it's coming back and they're getting like Andrew.
Right. That's exactly the Thomas Crook story. Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But
exactly.
Andrew's saying they don't have access. But then they showed you right there that they told him, "Hey, we got you covered." It's all weird, right?
It's Thomas Crooks to the T.
And then look at Tane Tucker released all that stuff saying he wasn't a ghost on the internet. Where he dug up all of his accounts. But that's what's crazy. Like, I don't know, play another second of this.
I ask our guys, are you believers? We have no ties to Israel or Mossad or any other one. We're Americans.
So that's where it's always bothered me to bring up the security guys in this, because I've watched them be next to him and all of his tours and stuff, you know, when he went out on campuses, that right-hand guy with the brown hair. It's not this dude, it's the brown-haired one. People were talking about hand signals and all that other stuff. I started to think, is my brain just not letting me try and even accept this as a possibility, because of the fact that they really genuinely look like they cared for them. The dude that I was always standing next to him, like, was with him all the time. You know, so I don't know. I couldn't let my brain do it, but my gut tells me that these security people, like, they had nothing to do with anything. But I mean, again, I'm talking about like the two main guys. I don't know if I can get this one to show.
We're in each other's business.
See, this dude was there, but I don't know.
Where they had the time for it, I wouldn't know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of The Charlie Kirk Show.
People that are in the media, you know, come out and say Charlie had
Here it is.
Very specific.
I thought it was close to the beginning, but like, this is the guy that was head over cameras and all that, right? He's the one that you saw everybody talked about 4 minutes after Charlie was killed. He went around and got the SD card out. This is what he did immediately after Charlie was shot.
Valuable they've been. Don't say you're searching for the truth.
I'm not trying to challenge what people would do in a moment like this, but this is weird to me.
They just shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie.
Here's your shots, honey.
Look, he spins it around right in time. This is them carrying him to the car. Right there.
He's dead.
Then back on him. And then he says he's dead. How did he know that?
Well, because it's
what
pretty obvious when someone's head goes from being, a certain size to swelling to like 4 inches around bigger because the bullet is like exploding the
all that,
inside of their body.
But no, you're missing my point. He's not like a bystander. He's not a kid that came to the event. This is part of Turning Point University staff that was head of the cameras and audio. He knows what PR is. He knows what it means. Why would he record a video of him saying that he's dead before he's even loaded into the
Well,
car?
so my understanding from Candace, that's the guy, he ran the cameras. He was a contractor that was a long-term person that Candace knew, and she was the source for him. He gave her a copy of what was on that camera. Am I wrong? And then
he showed. Hold on, no. He showed. She got to view what that camera saw through the Zoom room. So he didn't send her a link to it. He showed her via through. She had to watch it through either this or she said camera, kind of like through camera. But she's always stated that she didn't see anything. That's what, again, people can't really challenge her on, because I'm not saying that he's the one that shot Charlie. That's ridiculous. But to her credit, she's also said on that tape she didn't see any injury to the back of him. She didn't see. She's even the one that said that it was his chain that broke, that rose up. It wasn't blood splatter as people had claimed. So to me, that's what keeps giving her credibility, because she will come out and dispulge a rumor.
I mean, the kinetic energy swelled him up so big it broke a gold chain.
I mean,
that's crazy.
Yeah, but see, then that's where you run into an argument with people that try and say that looked like an entrance wound with the 30-06. That's where you run into that problem. Because if there was enough kinetic energy to break a chain, then you can't make the argument that when it got to his neck, all it did was leave a hole the size of a $50 or whatever.
I don't know. I just don't even go there, because there's nothing I could say that's going to add to the conversation until I see the autopsy.
That's my thing. I want to see the evidence. My whole thing about the faction with the faith faction of it is because the people that started joining the organization within the last 2.5, 3 years, and and some of the things that Charlie said himself, right? It seemed weird.
Okay, so my whole thing with the faith thing is this guy who is a very horrible, for me, personality, who's on YouTube, and he played a sermon that Mikey McCoy's dad, is it Roy McCoy, whatever his name is in a church giving a sermon. I don't know really exactly who he's speaking to, if it's parishioners or church leader, it's a group of church leaders. But anyway, he's just not talking about the Bible at all. I think he threw out a Bible quote, maybe one. But the time he's talking about, we talked to Charlie, and don't you worry, he's going to stop talking about Israel. And we told him, you got to stop talking about Israel, and we need you to pivot to talking about how evil Islam is. Mm-hmm. So don't you all worry anymore. He's not going to talk about Israel. This guy, I mean, that's the most damning thing. And so this guy, he then went to look at the video again, and during his live stream, the video was pulled.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, that was the sermon that he gave, where all he brought up was Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. No, he was standing in front of his parishioners. He was actually he calls himself the visitor pastor, because he used to pastor the church, but then when he moved to Arizona to get closer to Charlie, he gave the leadership of the church, apparently, or something. But and so, yeah,
these Zionist churches who allow the Israeli mobile to come and geofence them and all this stuff, and now Candace Owens getting into that, these churches, that celebrities were being brought in contact with these churches as a control mechanism. Mm-hmm. So I'm open-minded. I'll go where the evidence goes, but when you take it all together, Trump posts a picture with Israel behind Charlie first thing, then the entire country is melting down about Israel and people are fleeing to El Salvador. They're so afraid. And then you got this guy up on a stage saying, Charlie's not going to talk about Israel anymore. Don't you worry. He's going to talk about Islam. And then shortly thereafter, Charlie keeps talking about Israel and puts Tucker Carlson on the stage and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a pattern there. And then they run a play that's like goes back to the JFK playbook with calling cards of the antique gun. I don't know, man. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about. Those are the things that I've not seen good, valid answers for that buzz in my brain. And that don't make any sense to me, that nobody's given me even a reasonable argument against. Like, that's why I said I want to sit down and wait for the ballistic stuff to come out
yes.
about the firearm, just because I think that's important. I want to see the evidence, right? But these relationships that came in year and a half, 2 years for all this kind of stuff started with these kind of, looks like basically a couple of them. I can't remember that one dude's name. He came in like a year ago, year and a half ago. He's got really curly hair or something. There's a lot of big controversy around him being caught up in like some kind of fraud deal. I don't know, but that's what I mean. It's like he'd already had issues, and they bring him in to be a branch in the TPUSA faith family as a leader. And so I don't know. That's where it's sketchy to me. Is that kind of whole deal?
Right. And I mean, I guess the reason, again, going back to just my political experience in that, and dealing with dealing with donors, big donors. I also worked, in the fashion industry, dealing with very incredibly wealthy people, having to bring their clothes to them, put their clothes on them just on an average day, having to bring flowers if they're upset and all that. When someone gives you a lot of money, one of the reasons wealthy people are really wealthy, and anyone will, and this, I've had people tell me this. If you write a check, you got to put someone in there to watch where the money goes. And I mean, and a whole nother thing no one's explored also, which got dropped, which I think should be front and center, is that Charlie Kirk knocked out the Mormons from running the GOP. Romney's niece, Ronna, was running the GOP. She was controlling who would be the candidates. And Charlie Kirk challenged her, which has never, ever happened before, where an outsider came to the private meeting where they vote for a new leader. And he had been asking us, and I made the phone calls, to lobby our delegation from, in my case, Oklahoma, that we're going to this meeting to either vote for Ronna, or not vote for Ronna. That never happened before, and that was all Charlie Kirk.
Hey, what's her name again? Ronna?
Yeah, Ronna Romney McDaniels. Ronna McDaniels. She is Romney's niece, and she ran the GOP. And this is why Trump couldn't get any good people or good candidates.
Yeah.
And
so she was trying to sink the party intentionally.
So Charlie and Trump together, and I guess probably many other people, are like, Ronna is a big problem. They tried to get her to leave by talking about how much money she spent on clothes, food, and flowers. And she didn't leave, even though she was totally shamed. She actually was making TV appearances with, she had just gone and got those big flappy lips put on her lips. Talking with lips like the size of banana peels. And about her flowers and all that. And they kept her on that vote. But then the vote after that, she was thrown out. And so in essence, Romney, who of course is a huge rival of Trump, he's a hedge fund manager. He is a vulture capitalist who, like they're doing the Joanne Fabrics right now, they buy a company, they pile debt on it in the restructuring, and then they just sell it off wholesale, even if the company was completely profitable, just to roll that money into money laundering, basically. That's what Romney did. And the Mormons, as okay, I'll just say it, among like conservative groups, are called the Mormon Mafia because they controlled a lot of the GOP, just like the neocons, or some people might say neocons and Zionists. And so he stole the GOP away from them with, Trump, and put it into a Trump person's hands. And things got a lot easier for Trump once Romney wasn't controlling the party that Trump supposedly represents. And
just,
so,
just FYI, here's what she's doing. I just want to add some context to the part like you're talking. This is from June of this year. The ex-RNC chair Ronna McDaniel joins political group backed by the DeVos family, so that's always a good sign. It talks about how she's joined the Michigan Forward Network and a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening the Republican Party in the battleground state. McDaniel, the niece of former Utah Senator Mitt Romney, will serve as the organization's CEO, a newly created nonprofit funded in part by the powerful DeVos family. But if you look too in this June, if you know anything about like the timeline Candace has used and saw the kind of traffic and talk back and forth was happening, and that country we can't talk about without being called a name, then it was in June when all that was going on, and then we had the debate with the Tucker and the Josh Hammer and the Dave Smith debate, which was when was that, June something? In June 2 or July? You remember?
I didn't understand what date you're looking for.
The
Sorry.
Josh Hammer, Dave Smith debate?
Oh, it was it was like in the summer, right? It was on the weekend. I actually had it on while I was prepping for my show.
Yeah, it was
June. I
don't think it was, well, I'm looking like it was in
TPU Youth. Was it the youth thing? TP Turning Point USA Youth
July 13th,
Summit.
2025. Yeah, July 13th.
July 11th through 13th.
Yeah, July 13th to 2025. So this is about a month before that's when she apparently got this position funded by the DeVos family and all that.
Right, that's the DeVos.
This is what's always weird.
Do you know who the DeVos's are?
Yeah, the dude that looks like he's straight out of a Michael Myers movie.
So
the one in Switzerland.
Betsy DeVos. So they're the Amway people, and Betsy DeVos ran. Trump took her on to run Department of Ed, and she was supposed to shut down the Department of Ed. Didn't do a damn thing.
I can't believe nobody brings that up. Can't believe nobody kind of brings that up.
And then she's also her brother is Eric Prince.
Yep, I know.
Eric Prince is, in my opinion, a good guy in a way.
I feel like
and he kept giving Trump advice, and Trump wouldn't take the advice, and because of that, Trump got himself in a lot of trouble. But he should have taken Eric Prince's advice, in my opinion. But again, this is just another one of these elite families that run everything. So anyway, going back to Utah. So Cox is the governor of Utah. And you can just think of Utah because it actually is, if you know the history. And I don't know if we ever talked the history of the Mormons. Nothing against the Mormons, but the power structure of the Mormons made a deal with the federal government that they would stop having wars like they did in Illinois and in Missouri. And stealing.
Hey, we can keep talking, but let me end this here because we're going to get into the Mormon thing, which I love to have a conversation about. We've been going now for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
I'll just finish this. That Cox, Cox was hanging out with the governor of Colorado, and was introducing like LGBTXYZ trans stuff into Utah. And Charlie Kirk Also, Cox, there was things that needed to happen that didn't happen. And so Charlie Kirk said, TPUSA is going to go up to Utah and we are going to primary Cox and get rid of him. Mm-hmm. And so when Kash Patel and them had this press conference, Cox, who has nothing to do with the investigation, supposedly a governor, and his buddy who owns all the property around there, completely monopolized that press conference. And they did that for a reason. And if you think that Governor Cox liked Charlie Kirk, oh, hell no. Charlie Kirk was going to knock him out of his position. And he had already knocked Romneys out, who are also bishops, the bishop in the Mormon church. So I would have advised Charlie, guess what? When you say you're going to knock someone out and primary them, maybe you shouldn't have an event there. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going on their territory. So you did the Ronna Romney McDaniels thing, and now you're doing the Governor Cox thing, and now you're saying you're going to go with like virtually no security and no ambulance and do events in Utah? What? I mean, this is my other big problem with all this. Because I know just as a person, I wouldn't set foot in Utah if I was threatening the power structure there. And if anyone I managed asked me, well, should I go to Utah after I did these things? I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't think so. So that's just me. But that's a whole nother thing that somehow everyone's talking about bullets and all this stuff, and no one's talking about that when this guy completely monopolized the whole thing. And then his courts, his judges, and his investigators wrote up this ridiculous charging document with a text message that no young guys ever wrote, ever. And this whole weird timeline and all that. That's all his investigators. This is the subversion of Candace Owens. She says the feds did this, the feds did that, the feds did this, the feds did that. The feds have done nothing. They have no charging document. They've released no lab reports. They've released nothing. All of this is under Governor Cox.
I know, but I don't want to get into the whole Fed debate either. Like we've kind of done that, but yeah.
I'm just saying that this is all
I
controlled.
I believe they did that to themselves. I believe Kash Patel said a whole lot of stuff in the beginning of Charlie Kirk's assassination that if he didn't mean, he shouldn't have said. And so that's why I think a lot of people have the issue with the FBI. I'm not saying they're right or wrong.
No, I'm just saying the fact
was bad.
The facts of the case is that the court case, the judge, the charging documents, the evidence, and all of it right now is being controlled by Governor Cox, a person who Charlie Kirk said he was going to take out. That's all I'm saying.
All right, with that, we are going to end it. We've got to end this, girl. It's over 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
it's a big topic.
Yeah, no, that's why we can't keep going on it.
And you can't really get into it without the background. You really just can't.
Yeah, well, we can't save that conversation for another day because the Mormon Mafia and the largest religious landowner in America and right with the Catholic Church, is having the most money. A lot of people don't talk about the Mormons, but they are one of the richest religion in America.
Yeah.
But, all right, girl, I'm going to end this so I can we can say farewell, but we'll have this conversation again.
All righty.
Sound good? All right.
Yep.